The December 1st, 2022 regular session of the Clarksville City Council is now called to order. Our chaplain of the day will be Pastor Anthony Daly, Mosaic Church. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilperson Streetman. Pastor Daly, if you would please come to the well, and I'll invite everyone to stand if they wish. And Pastor Daly, pray for us, please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Father, we love you today. We look around this world and we can just say, Lord, that we are grateful for the life and the lifestyle that you have given us in this city to raise our kids and bring our families up, the opportunities that exist here. God, we just give you praise and glory for all of that. But even more so, Lord, we thank you for Jesus, Lord, that has made the atonement, God, that we can have relationship and fellowship with you. Father, you said pray for those in authority, Lord, that you place there, Lord. Tonight we pray for this council, God. The work that is ahead of them, God, is meaningful. And I pray that you would give them wisdom and guidance, Father, that they may derive at the decisions that serve your purpose in our city and this region, Lord. I bless them tonight and I give you praise for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members, please register your attendance. Madam Clerk, take the roll.
All members are present with the exception of Councilmember Shakinab, who is excused.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have a special recognition. I'll invite Councilmember Vondale Richmond to join me in the well. It is our custom and our tradition to recognize members who are completing their term and not returning come January when a new council is seated. And tonight we have one such member, and Councilmember Vondale Richmond. And we have a proclamation for you, sir, to recognize your service to our city for the past 4 years as an able representative of Ward 2. And so with and I didn't mean to do that.
It's ready to go.
But thank you, sir. This recognition is in honor of your service, and we want to say thank you for what you've done for our city, and it's my honor to present this to you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And I'll turn the mic over to offer you an opportunity to have some remarks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Wow. It's been a real honor. I prepared a few words tonight, but it's, the Lord does all things well. Pastor Daly, 6 years ago now, I landed here back in Clarksville homeless after the 2008. I was one of those thousands of Americans who lost their home, and that was my first home. And so once I landed here, I had a lot of questions, and I had my faith, but it was down there somewhere, if you know what I mean. And just sort of Ubered over to a church about 5 minutes up the road and found a local community that embraced me. They allowed me to serve. That's all I knew to do. And I started teaching a Dave Ramsey financial peace class when that gentleman who just prayed got up to raise the vision that we were going to build a $4 million edifice for this community. So I got to serving. And shortly thereafter, Pastor gave me a call and said, hey, can you come by the office? I want to meet with you. I thought he was going to ask me to take over the drama ministry or start one. And he said, hey, you made an impression. There was not a soul here for 3 weeks straight, but you just said, Pastor, I can't stop and talk to you. I've got to get on Facebook and get a couple Connect group members here to take that course. Well, it turns out, fast forward, he asked me to lead not the drama ministry, but the new members team. And so I proudly stepped up into that role. A few months later, I got a call from our associate pastor who said, hey, Pastor Daly saw in the paper that there's a vacancy for Ward 2 coming up, and we think you ought to run. And I literally laughed in his face and said, Pastor Aaron, I'm honored, but I'm an actor. I could play one on TV, but I don't think that I'm your guy. And then Pastor Daly got on and said, Vondale, you've come here and demonstrated servant leadership here, and we believe in you, and you'd be a great leader. So why don't you at least pray about it? So I air quoted, I'll pray about it. And I picked up the packet and went out and got 25 signatures and turned in the packet and just thought I was wiping my hands of it to walk away. Fast forward, Valerie Guzman mentored me through that process, and she said, well, Friday, if the other people that were there don't have those signatures, that's it. I said, what do you mean that's it? She said, well, you're it. And I said, no, 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 no. And I went to go pray about it. And God and I had a wrestling match, and we all know our arms are too short to box with God. And he ended up having his way. But I did have a question, God. What does a city council member do? And I said, all I have is a teaching background, an acting background, and a leadership background. And he said that's all you need to do is just be able to ask questions and educate that back to the general public. And so here we are. So it's been a real honor to serve this city in this capacity. I wrote the last portion of this down. I just want to thank my family, my friends, my Mosaic and extended faith family there at the church, to the city of Clarksville, and this body of council peers. Thank you so much. It's been a real honor and a privilege to serve alongside each and every one of you as current peers, and then the former peers that I served with and learned along the way. So I understand a little bit about being nervous and not knowing how this thing goes. To every department head who sat with me and answered every question, silly or non-silly, thank you so much for the opportunity to glean from you and just to learn my way forward. And again, to the mayor for believing in me and empowering me. I remember coming to visit you in your office, and he said, hey, you're going to lead a luncheon. And I'm like, I thought you were going to do it. And so we did it together, and I thank you for that. So it's been a real honor. I think that's it. I got everyone. Thank you, Mayor, to the mayor's office. And I believe that's it. God bless you, and I look forward to serving outside of this particular position and welcoming back Councilwoman Deanna back to the throne. Back to the to the service, place of service. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Next item on our agenda is the Planning Commission report. Councilperson Streetman, you are recognized for the Planning Commission report.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 4 items on our agenda tonight. Madam Clerk, will you please read the ordinances?
Ordinance 52, 2022-23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Arthur Parchman, Colt Milam agent, for zone change on property located at the intersection of Cumberland Drive and Charlotte Street from C2 General Commercial District to R6 Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 53, 2022-23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Rita Home Builders for zone change on property located at the intersection of Airport Road and Cinderella Lane from R1 Single Family Residential District to R2A Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 54, 2022-23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Bryce Powers for zone change on property located at a parcel fronting on the south frontage of Vine Street, at the terminus of Vine Street, and an adjacent parcel fronting on the north frontage of Cedar Street, at the terminus of Cedar Street from C1 Neighborhood Commercial District to R6 Single Family Residential District, and Ordinance 55, 2021-22, first reading, an ordinance amending the city zoning ordinance of the city of Clarksville as it pertains to lot coverage and cluster subdivision regulations.
Councilperson Streetman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mayor, I move we go into public hearing.
Motion been made and properly seconded to revert to public hearing without objection. We are now in public hearing. First item on our public hearing list is item 1, ordinance 52, 2022-23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Arthur Parchman, Colt Milam agent. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of ordinance 52? Mr. Milam, give us your name and address. You have 5 minutes.
Thanks. I reside at 1510 Oak Plains Road. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I believe this passing through zoning will be very beneficial in many ways. The current zoning is a C2, which would allow a commercial building or apartments to be built in this site. Rezoning would keep the charm of the downtown area by building affordable single-family homes There's an adjacent, same zoning street over that's adjacent. It's the same zoning as I'm going for, which is R6. I do believe an R6 zoning would be best suited for this area. Develop this property. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Anything I can answer questions for you?
Thank you, Mr. Milam. We have questions. Councilperson Allen, you have a question or comment for Mr. Milam?
So my biggest question about this zoning is, there wasn't an estimate on how many houses that are going to be built, and they said it would be better to speak to you guys about that.
Yes, ma'am. So we haven't had the official survey. So right now there's Ledbetter signs, which that owner is going to keep that property. And then if it goes through zoning, we'll have an official survey between 6 and 7 is what it looks like with drawing out on a digital map. So
6 and 7 units?
6 or 7 individual homes.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for sharing your information. Are you the one that came in here wanting to build a house over there off of Madison on Wisdom or something over there? And
yeah,
you brought us
a long time
yeah,
ago.
no, it wasn't that long.
Yeah,
And you brought a fake picture in here
I didn't. I brought off one off the
from
internet.
off the internet. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to ask you is, how big are these homes going to be?
Here is the actual architectural drawing you can have right here. I'm ready for you. The one I brought last time was just a picture I printed off Google.
I
It's
know.
similar, but this is actually what's the same thing that's
Can you
on.
see that, Mayor?
Yeah, I can.
If you'll give it to Sergeant Tranberg, he can pass that around for
But
us.
that picture that I brought last time was some, and I said last at the speech it was something I printed off Google. It was something similar to what we would build.
No, you didn't tell us. The residents told us. But I hope that what you're doing now is going to be beneficial in that area. It is a small road. You do know that, right?
Yes, ma'am. So we talked to the street department, and they're only going to allow one access way, so off of Cumberland. So what we're probably going to do, and obviously I guess it goes through site review, is there's a right behind it. I think it's Charlotte Street is right behind it. It's like a triangle piece of property. The entrance will be off Charlotte, not on Cumberland.
I think we do. Are you going to build sidewalks? Because we
Yeah.
do need to widen the street.
R6 will require sidewalks, so will be sidewalks all through, all down that, in front of the development.
Only one car can get down there now. So what are you going to do about the traffic and the congestion? People getting in and out, trying to park. Where they going to
Well,
park?
the parking's going to be off Charlotte, which is behind it. There'll be an alleyway off Charlotte. So the property, I don't know if you have the drawing, but it's kind of like a triangle piece, and it will come off Charlotte. So there won't be, more than likely, there won't be any driveways off Cumberland.
Okay.
So
All
it'll
right.
all come off Charlotte.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So,
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just want to, this is similar to what you're going to be doing?
that's what that lot size would allow to build.
Okay, but it might not necessarily.
It'd be that same size. Maybe the building materials may change a little bit with how everything's changing, because that one if y'all go down, I think you rezoned it on Fairview Drive. That's the house they built on Fairview, which is all hardy. But I think with the way things are changing, it might go to more siding,
Well,
stuff
I,
like that.
I knew I'd noticed it was Fairview and it was dated for March.
Yep.
So that was why I was asking to make sure we
Yes,
weren't
ma'am.
saying it was the plan for
Yeah.
this.
So that the guy that I'm working with on that's what he's planning on building. So that's the lot size that will fit.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, I'd like to know how many driveways off Charlotte will you each person have their own driveway, or what is your?
It hasn't got. I'll have to do it through I guess the site review. But what it's looking right now is one entrance off Charlotte and an alleyway, and then so it will be almost like an alleyway and parking off the alleyway.
So then the residents will be responsible to maintain the alleyway.
I don't know.
The street will not.
I guess, or yeah. I mean,
Okay,
maybe. I guess I don't know how that works, yes, ma'am.
right, thank you.
Any other comment or question for Mr. Milam? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience? Right here, Mr. Baker. We make sure it gets into the record. All right, thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak in favor of Ordinance 52? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against Ordinance 52? Next item on our public hearing list and agenda is Ordinance 53, 2022-23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Rita Home Builders. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of Ordinance 53? Mr. Rita, give us your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Hello, Mayor, City Council. My name's Ricky Rita, 2510 Lylewood Road. I want to start off with congratulations, Mayor. with the new term and everyone that was reelected here on the city council. Great run there. I don't have a lot of questions. If you got any questions for me, I'm here on this R2A on Airport Road.
Any questions for Mr. Rita? Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you. Did you have any oppositions from any of the citizens or residents around the area?
No, ma'am, I had no calls on this one.
They've been notified?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay. That's why you don't have any oppositions then.
I think she asked, were they notified?
Oh, I'm
You
sorry.
said no.
Yes, they were.
They were notified, yes, ma'am, with their signs. I mean, I didn't physically reach out to them, Miss Smith.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
all right.
I would though. If you ever have someone that needs a constituent that needs to speak with me, I'd always be there for you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rita.
You're welcome.
Any other comment or question for Mr. Rita? Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 53? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 53? Next item is item 3, ordinance 54, 2022-23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Bryce Powers. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 54? If you will give us your name and address, you have 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Ross Elliott. I live at 2778 Scenic Drive. Simply want to rezone the current zoning of C1 to R6, which is a primary residential area already. I'd like to put 5 or 6 affordable houses up there.
Any comment or question for Mr. Elliott? Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. You said affordable homes. What size are these homes? you
They'll
plan
be reflective for the houses across the street on Dodd, roughly 1,200 square feet.
1,200?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. They won't look like barns, will they? The little
Barns,
barn-like homes, the little narrow homes.
the tall and skinny ones.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, but with a little more
Now
character.
that don't resemble those houses across the street.
Those are a little wider.
They're way
Definitely.
wider.
Yes, ma'am. They will have some character to them.
If they that narrow, I would be voting against them if they're gonna be like that. Because you just said they will be like the ones across the street, and the house across the street is a brick home, and it's pretty wide.
I was referring to the ones across the way on Dodge Street, the new ones that are being built on the other side of the church.
Oh, I don't know about those.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other comment or question for Mr. Elliott? Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 54? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 54? Next item, item 4, ordinance 55, 2021-22, an ordinance amending the city zoning ordinance of the city of Clarksville, Tennessee as it pertains to lot coverage and cluster subdivision regulations. Anyone in the audience wish to speak in favor of ordinance 55? Anyone in the audience wish to speak against ordinance 55? That completes our public hearing list. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Mayor, I move we go back into regular session.
Motion been made and properly seconded to revert to regular session. Any objection? We are back in regular session. Councilperson Streetman.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 52, 2022, 23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Arthur Parchman, Colt Milam agent for zone change on property located at the intersection of Cumberland Drive and Charlotte Street from C2 General Commercial District to R6 Single Family Residential District. Both the Regional Planning Commission and staff approved, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 52. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized. Or Reynolds, excuse me.
Yeah, I would like to, I know I wasn't here Thursday, but I watched the session online. And the street department is requiring that the road be widened with sidewalks. But the builder has acknowledged that he will build an alleyway. We as a city are allowing them to circumvent, not doing the right thing. If we're going to infill, then we need to follow our ordinances and we need to follow the guidelines set by our street department. I understand that infill is expensive, including having to maybe widen a bridge, but not following through and widening our roads and improving our infrastructure as we go along is how we got into this mess. I just the street has done their due diligence and they have said that it has to be widened, and now it's really up to the planning commission to do the right thing and improve the road if they're going to approve the building when they come forward with the plans on this. So I will be watching this one and I just follow through on this, but I have concerns because when they say they're gonna do an alley, that's because they don't want to do what the street department has recommended, and it's a get around from the street department recommendations.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Yes, first of all, I apologize. I kind of misspoke when I was first reading this. I meant to say the Regional Planning Commission and staff recommended approval. I apologize for misstating that. And also, I'm not quite sure on the previous speaker. They may still have to do the sidewalks, even regardless of the alleyway, because it's still going to be along there. I can't say that for certain, but I don't want you to think that it's completely out of the question for them to have to still do that.
Councilperson Richmond, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Sort of echoing some of the sentiments of the previous speaker, there was some email that we did get. I think it went to the entire council, and I just want to kind of bring that up. I personally did go on that area, on that back road, and so in reference to this email, I can attest, it is a pretty narrow way, and so the concern from the resident, number one, is that it's a very narrow street, and that's what I was agreeing to, and the bridge is a little over 17 feet. The bridge also is on a hill, has a drainage tunnel right under it, and the resident said it currently, as they sent this photo, I could resend this out. We got this email on November 22nd. Also spoke of standing water there. The wildlife frequents that creek during heavy rains. The resident mentioned that the creek becomes filled with water and you can hear it rushing down the hill there in the creek. And they sanctioned it a flooding hazard, and it may be in a flood zone. And then to kind of get to the end of it here, here was the main thing I think that the previous speaker was speaking to. Cumberland is also a somewhat busy road, and it's very narrow. The road to Charlotte is very steep and has a terrible blind spot. I'm afraid there will not be enough road frontage of Cumberland. I think that's the major issue here, especially if sidewalks are added. There's also a secondary bridge there on Cumberland, so I'm not sure how a sidewalk will be added to the road. They just wanted their concerns to be heard by this council, and they felt that also they weren't opposed to the zoning, but they felt it would be better suited for R1 or even to an R3, depending on how small the lots were. And so I just wanted to add that into our discussion tonight. Thank you.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have the best memory, but I think, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, that when we talked about this on Tuesday, the alley was being built because they can only have one entrance on both of those streets. And I think we were told that the sidewalks would still be put in. And then about the the drainage, I believe that Mr. Tyndall said they were hoping that this would aid in that rather than exacerbate it. Okay, thanks.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I thought that when I heard it, that they were only allowed one entrance on Cumberland. They can do more entrances on the other road, but it would require improvements unless they just do one alleyway. Then they only have to improve the road or do something to the alleyway, to the one entrance. But if they do one for each house, and that's more improvements along the road they have to make.
That will all be determined in site plan review.
Right, which I'll be watching for.
Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to add to that, going back to my notes from last week about the drainage situation, I wrote that they were going to be required for the drain point to be moved, just to add to the conversation there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. My main concern is widening of the streets. How can we guarantee that the streets will be widened? Because I don't want to put the my constituents in any danger. If they have children, the streets are narrow, it's congested. How are they going to turn around? It's just going to be a problem. And I can't see allowing all these homes. And I'm not against builders building homes in R6s. I'm not against that. I want you to get that clear. Let's make that clear. But I am concerned about the congestion on that narrow street. I don't understand how the first responders are gonna get in and out of there. I've been over there, and I do have some, I did have some people call me in opposition of this. And, so, I mean, if they say that they're gonna widen the streets, I wanna make sure that this happens. I don't want them to just talk about it. I want them to be about it. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
9 yes, 3 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 52 passes. First reading. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 53, 2022, 23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Rita Home Builders Incorporated for zone change on property located at the intersection of Airport Road and Cinderella Lane from R1 Single Family Residential District to R2A Single Family Residential District. Both the Regional Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 53. Any comment or question regarding ordinance 53? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 53 is adopted. First reading. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Ordinance 54, 2022, 23, first reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Bryce Powers for zone change on property located at a parcel fronting on the south frontage of Vine Street at the terminus of Vine Street and an adjacent parcel fronting on the north frontage of Cedar Street at the terminus of Cedar Street from C1 Neighborhood Commercial District to R6 Single Family Residential District. Both the Regional Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 54. Any comment or question regarding ordinance 54? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 54 is adopted. First reading. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Ordinance 55, 2022, 23, first reading. An ordinance amending the city zoning ordinance of the city of Clarksville, Tennessee, as it pertains to lot coverage and cluster subdivision regulations. Both the Regional Planning Commission and the staff recommended approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 55. I believe we have amendments. Councilperson Reynolds, you are recognized on your amendments.
Yes, I have submitted some amendments. The first amendment I would like to read is, or propose, is to remove ag from the cluster ordinance. That's the one.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of Amendment 1. I think we all have copies of
This is the
that.
back side of the two-page one. So it's the two-page one.
It's the two-page amendment. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized on the amendment.
So I would like to first tell you ag, the definition of ag, in the ordinance is, ag is to provide for proper utilization of those lands best suited for production of agriculture products such as field or livestock. So that's the definition of ag. Recently, now I'm going to go back to the ordinance. All I'm changing is if you go back to the front page, I'm only removing ag from the ordinance, and then I'm mirroring where they are proposing to remove estate and R2A. I'm just adding ag to it and the corresponding paragraphs that mirror the original amendment. One of the reasons that this caught my eye, and when I started really researching this, is in July, we voted against an ordinance in the regular session regarding North Gibbs Lane and the southern terminus of Viewmont. So what the builder did is they went back and they applied the cluster to their design, and now in an area that we did not want to, that we wanted to wait until the road was widened, they're now going to build 100 homes. So they're basically utilizing this as a loophole. And I think that it's time, as we see these loopholes, we need to start closing them. Ag does not belong in a cluster development. Ag is a specific, use. And so the intent of a cluster is to facilitate the development of tracts with the environmental constraints as densities comparable to tracts with environmental limitations, and permit greater flexibility for creative design and achieve superior scenic quality and recreational opportunities close to home. By providing residential subdivisions which incorporate permanent local open spaces for all residents within the subject tract. I'm not opposed to cluster. I'm saying that ag does not need to be in a cluster, in the cluster ordinance. Does anyone have any questions?
That's my script. Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay. I understand you, or am I understanding you correctly? You just want it out of there completely.
That's a question for the sponsor.
Yes,
You're
sir.
recognized.
Out of the cluster. I'm only removing ag out of the cluster ordinance. Thank you. So all the other types of buildings will still be allowed, just not the ag.
But is ag not already, because this is an amendment to the zoning code as it is, right?
Right.
So is ag not already in it at 30%? Because to me, it looks like the original one is actually restricting ag more. It's going from 30 to 25%.
So that is staying. That is overall the amount of property coverage. So that's another part of what they're amending. I'm only looking at the paragraph that they want to remove. They're proposing to remove E1A and R2A from the cluster developments because those are already closer together. And so I reviewed that, and I'm saying that ag does not have a place at all in a cluster development.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comment or question regarding the amendment? Hearing none. Councilperson Redd, you're recognized on the amendment.
Would just like to say real quick, did you run this by Mr. Kendall, the director of the RPC, and you know if he had any input on this particular item?
To the sponsor.
Yes, I spoke to him and actually had him review and discussed it with him multiple times. I also reached out to other people on the RPC board and had the conversation about ag and just making sure that I wasn't misinterpreting. So yes, I ran it by all of them in writing. Like they have seen it and reviewed it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just have a question with that current development that I guess is in process using this clustered in ag. Do we know how that would affect it? Will it halt it, or so they'll be like grandfathered in and then anybody else after them won't be able if this passes? Is that how that works?
Is that a question to the sponsor?
Whoever can answer, I guess.
I can.
To the sponsor.
Yeah.
Yes, that is there. That will not affect them. They actually are, as I said, building over 900. Open spaces must be must be 15% in a cluster. And so they clustered the ag in there and then kind of dispersed the cluster back into the ag, dispersed the open space into the unusable space that they can't use. That will stand. That's passed. I was just saying that this is a loophole, and as we discover loopholes, we need to close them.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know who to ask the question to. My concern is this: if we're removing ag from the cluster, this cluster development, and then we're removing R2A, how would that affect other neighborhoods?
We'll let the sponsor take a stab if she'd like.
So I would like to first, just more for the audience, not to mansplain to you, so just for the audience. The ordinance is removing E1A and R2A already. Like, I didn't add that. I'm only adding that we should also remove ag. I think it was an oversight that agriculture was put into this ordinance in the first place, because as I provided the definition, it doesn't, there's nothing in agriculture zoning that belongs in a cluster community. So I think it's an oversight that that was part of that. How it'll affect other ones, this is a standing one. R2A is already R2A, and I believe, and maybe Ms. Streetman could fix that. I believe that they felt that they were already condensing those R2A and the other one, and so that they did not belong here, but I'm not really sure of that answer.
Is this-
Councilperson Smith, you have the
Thank
floor.
you, sir. Is this just in this one area, or this is gonna be for the whole city? The whole communities in the city?
So the one area that's already doing it, they're grandfathered. I mean, they will build, they've made their plans, they've been approved, their subdivision will move forward. This just means in the future, if it's agriculture, I cannot go in and use a cluster development in an agriculturally zoned community.
My main concern is R2A. And so I understand what you're saying. You're removing the ag from this. My concern is R2A. How would this affect other neighborhoods? Who can answer that?
Councilperson Reynolds?
I'm not sure what you mean. So what you mean by
If they removing the R2A
from the cluster,
Uh-huh,
not from all zoning, just from a specific cluster. A cluster allows you to make things closer together.
yeah, I understand that.
Right, so it's just the cluster. You will still be able to build R2A in the community, not just when you come in with a subdivision that you're trying to use the cluster.
Thank you, but I think we need to postpone this until we understand this. I don't understand this quite well, how it's gonna affect other communities, and I just think we need to postpone it until we get a further understanding on this.
So
I understand I
Okay.
don't have a problem with that. My problem is, and what I'm trying to understand is R2A. How is that going to affect other neighborhoods if they removing this from the cluster?
This will be first reading, so Mr. Tyndall will be back at the next executive session and can address that, or he can address it between meetings. Councilperson Reynolds?
I'm sorry. I mean,
Okay,
Yeah, okay.
I pass.
all right.
Okay, well, we'll wait until next time and next time we vote and talk to Mr. Tyndall about it. And I will be voting against this, not yours, but this whole ordinance. Thank you.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, on that note, per TCA, doesn't this have to go back to the RPC for approval on the approval of our approval?
Mr. Baker?
He did a deep sigh.
Talked with Mr. Tyndall and reviewed all this, and in my view, my legal opinion, the proposed amendment one that Councilmember Reynolds is offering is a material change that if her amendment were to pass, it would require by law that this go back to the Regional Planning Commission for new consideration, exactly as you've suggested. And just to go ahead and cover the second amendment, I think she's going to add, I think that's also a material change. So if either one of her amendments or both passes, I think the next step to be in compliance with law would be someone would need to make a motion to refer this ordinance back to the Regional Planning Commission for further review.
Councilperson Butler, you have the floor.
That's great. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to try and explain a little bit on it won't affect other neighborhoods. So if you have a lot that's zoned R2A, that lot is still going to be, if it's rezoned, zoned, whatever, that's still going to be an R2A. It's not going to affect that. If you've got a small area that's maybe just going to be, 2 or 3 homes that are going to go on that, it's not going to affect that. What what the sponsor of the amendment was trying to explain was that this is only in regards to when you're looking at it as a cluster subdivision, that if should this amendment pass, or regardless, if it's the R2A on that, if it's a large tract of land that's zoned R2A, they won't be able to utilize the cluster subdivision rules to be able to do that. They could still do it on R1, they could still do it on various others, or not various, but others, but it's going to take this one out as far as the R2A. But again, when you're talking about your smaller lots where it's just going to be, just a few, that's not going to be a cluster subdivision. It's not going to affect those. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Councilperson Allen, you recognized.
Never mind.
Any other comment or question regarding the amendment? Are you ready to vote on amendment number 1? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
11 yes, 10 yes, 2 no, 0 abstain.
Amendment 1 is adopted. We're now ready for Amendment 2. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized on Amendment 2.
All right, thank you. So Amendment 2 is the single page, no pictures, and it's actually got the yellow highlight on the back. So they are proposing to allow.
If you would, make a motion so we can get it in front of us.
Thank you. I motion to delete subsection 3.q from this ordinance.
Motion been made in favor of ordinance 2. You're recognized for an explanation.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Thank
That's
you, Mayor.
okay.
So there's a requirement in the cluster ordinance that there be 15% open space within the cluster. Of that 15% open space that's required in the cluster, 50% of that can be flood or topographic unbuildable land. But they still have 7% basically that is open property that is a requirement for the cluster. So I think that based on that, we should not allow flag lots, which is one lot behind the other and a shared driveway in these already very dense neighborhoods. There's open space requirements. I think that they can manage that without flag lots, create issues. I don't even think the county allows flag lots. I'm not positive. But I just think that in a dense neighborhood, we do not need to put flag lots when they already are required to have open space.
You've heard the explanation. Councilperson Allen on Amendment 2.
I just have
Go ahead.
Address something real quick.
Sorry.
I'm
All
sorry,
right, so-
Councilperson Allen. Mr. Baker?
So I want to make sure you understand something that subsection 3Q as already
Mr. Baker, if you wouldn't mind, get closer to the mic.
subsection 3Q already prohibits flag lots.
Right, but they're proposing the change to include, to the limit, to allow 2 per cluster.
Right.
So I'm
But-
saying
but
that
you,
I want to delete the whole, oh, I see. So
you
I
don't
made
want
the
to
wrong
delete
motion.
it. You're showing deleting both.
Yes,
You want to delete the second. Everybody look at her amendment. She wants to delete the proposed new language in the new ordinance. The effect of that would be to keep the original language.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure y'all understand that because this shows everything goes away.
No, and thank you.
All right.
Do I need to do something?
No, just.
Okay,
Councilperson Allen, you are recognized.
thank you.
So I was going to say the same thing that Mr. Baker said, but then I think when it comes to the flagpole lot, when you're building a smaller cluster, which a small cluster can be 10, and then you build a great big large cluster that's 900 houses, it's 2 only, whether it's 10 or whether it's 2. And I think that does a disservice to those with smaller clusters that may only have 10 houses. 10 houses in their cluster. If they decide to use a flagpole, there can be 2 in that very, very small lot. I think that does a disservice to the home buyers and those type of people. Now, if there was a number or a limit that said anything over 100 homes, I would be for this, but I'm going to be voting against it tonight. Thank you.
Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it's just two flag lots, and really, just from what I'm looking at, flag lots, it looks like it creates more flexibility for from the development side. So I will be voting this down, but that's all I've got. Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized on Amendment 2.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to say the same thing. It does just add more flexibility. I know one of the things that Mr. Tyndall talked about last week, or not last week, 2 nights ago, that might not have to have a cul-de-sac at the end of it. It's just a tool that they would be able to use if they needed, not necessarily something we would see a lot, but would allow us to have that, or allow them to have it to be able to utilize it if need be. So I'll actually be voting against this amendment.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized on your Amendment 2.
Yes, I'd just like to say that we're infilling, and then we're making two people share a driveway, which creates its own issues. I'm not opposed, generally speaking, to flag lots, but I want to remind you, in these neighborhoods, they're already close together, and now I'm going to put in cement and a connected driveway and force people that are already living very close together to share a driveway, just so I can get another house on property. Just make the spot that you can't get to part of your open space, and put a basketball court back there or something. Thank you.
Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
Okay, so so he did explain what the flag lot is. So maybe I need some clarity. The driveway piece that would be the pole of the flag would come in, and then the lot would be behind this other house. Okay, so if you have a smaller cluster, and you decide to put 2 in there because you can save some space, then you're already clustered, and then you're breaking it down a little bit more. So I think at this point, I would like to make a motion to send it back to the RBC. And maybe there be maybe your smaller clusters are.
Hang on, let her.
This is a motion to amend. If you want to send the whole ordinance as amended, or if it fails amendment, you could send the whole thing back.
Oh shoot, we're not on the original, are we? Okay,
Just
my
talking
bad.
about hers.
Amendment 2.
Okay, thank you. My bad. Sorry.
That's okay. It's a good thought. All right. Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
I'm sorry. My questions have been answered. Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you. I want to clarify that when we're talking about this flag lot and you do have that strip coming down, it doesn't mean it's a shared driveway. That would be likely be the driveway for the lot in the back. Then the front lot would have its own driveway. So the flag lot doesn't mean that it's a shared driveway. It just means there's a strip that's coming forward that's connecting to the road. So I just want to clarify that it's not, I think that might have been just a little bit confusing there, and I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that.
Okay, any more comment or question regarding Amendment 2? Seeing none, are you ready to vote on Amendment 2? Every member cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
3 yes, 9 no, 0 abstain.
Amendment 2 fails. We're back on the main motion as amended. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I move that we, what's the wording, Mr.? Return the, refer the ordinance back to RPC.
Okay, motion's been made and properly seconded to re-refer ordinance 55 as amended back to the Regional Planning Commission. Any comment or question? Councilperson Allen, do you wish to speak to the motion to refer?
Did the amendment pass?
The first amendment did, the second one failed.
Okay.
But it still goes back.
Okay. I'm correct. No.
Okay. All right, any more comment or question regarding the amendment to re-refer to Regional Planning Commission? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Motion to refer passes. Thank you. We're now ready for I'm sorry, Councilperson Streetman.
That
You're-
concludes my report.
Okay. Now we're ready for the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read the consent agenda.
All items in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the council may request that an item be removed for separate consideration under the appropriate committee report. Ordinance 9, 2022-23, second reading, an ordinance amending the official code of ordinance of the city of Clarksville, Title 4, Building, Utility, and Housing Codes, Chapter 3, to add new section 4-315, 4-316, and 4-317, establishing an electrical and mechanical board. Ordinance 47, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Aon Construction for zone change on property located at the intersection of Riverside Drive and Barker Street from R3, three-family residential district to R6, single-family residential district. Ordinance 48, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Bill Pollard, Wade Hadley agent, for zone change on property located at the intersection of Dover Road, US Highway 79, and Kelsey Drive from R1, single-family residential district, and C2, general commercial district, to C5, highway and arterial commercial district. Ordinance 49, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Yogesh Kumar Patel for zone change on property located at the intersection of Trenton Road and Welchwood Drive from R1, single-family residential district, to R2, single-family residential district. Ordinance 50, 2022-23, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Universal Exports for zone change on property fronting the western terminus of Pruitt Lane, south of Pruitt Lane, and west of Whitfield Road from AG Agricultural District to R4, Multiple Family Residential District. Resolution 39B, 2022-23, which was postponed from the November 3rd meeting. A resolution approving an appointment to the Parking Commission. Resolution 40, 2022-23, a resolution approving appointments to the Audit Committee and Planning Commission, and the adoption of minutes from November 3rd.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I need a motion and a second for the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, Councilperson Reynolds, on the consent agenda, you're recognized.
Yes, I would like to register a no vote for item number 2, ordinance 47, 2022-23. And I would like to pull ordinance 49, 2022-23, and item number 5, ordinance 50, 2022-23 from the consent agenda.
Okay, we'll take those up under new business. Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
I would like to pull item number 6, resolution 39B 2022-23.
Thank you. We'll take that up under new business as well. Anybody else wish to be recognized on the consent agenda? Hearing none, seeing none, are you ready to vote on the consent agenda? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Consent agenda is adopted. We're now ready for the Finance Committee report. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 51, 2022-23, first reading. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into an agreement and acquire property for a public purpose for expansion of Dixon Park and to swap and convey City of Clarksville property in exchange therefore. Finance Committee voted in favor of approval, and I so move.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 51. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized on ordinance 51.
Yes, I've researched this and spoke to Ms. Mata. I want to be clear that the property that we're acquiring, the value is $39,800, and we're swapping for a property that's $8,000, and the second property is valued at $17,700. So for a total of I should have done my math, 5, 7, 40, 47, 57. I mean, there's quite an increase between the property values. We can only buy a property at the appraised value. So why didn't we just swap like for like?
Well, because the deal that was made with the Blick brothers, Adam and Jonathan, was to acquire a very valuable piece of property they own, that little triangle, that allows us to build a junior pro football practice field in Dixon Park, a very heavily used park, and continue some of the renovations of that park, which includes resurfacing the basketball court and the L&N train depot. That's why we're doing that swap, or asking to do that swap.
I'm not opposed to the swap. I'm questioning why we're paying so much more for property.
That's the deal on the table.
I feel like the city is getting took.
Well, if you look at the value of what the community will get as a result of having the field back there, because we are terribly short of fields for the junior pro football leagues to practice and play, I think we're getting a pretty good deal by swapping a postage stamp lot and a buildable lot for this one that will allow us to put up a football field, or almost. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just also like to point out, especially when you take into consideration the buildable lot, that it is going to be putting those lots back on the tax roll. Like I said, when you think about the buildable roll, you've buildable lot, then you've got a house going on there. You're going to start generating tax income from that. So that, will be something that we are getting back in return as well.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mayor. You stole my thunder, but I'm still going to say it because I actually changed my mind between Tuesday and now, because it occurred to me I don't like us owning property anyway. So if we own less property and it's on the tax rolls, that's a good thing. So I encourage you to vote yes on this. Thanks.
Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
I think it's very important to say that my son, he plays football, and the mayor is correct. There is nowhere for our children to practice and play football here in the community. It's very difficult to acquire field space. So I'm going to be voting for this so that we can get this football field up and going.
Anyone else wish to speak on Ordinance 51? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 51 is adopted. First reading. Councilperson Streetman. I'm sorry. Sleep at the wheel here. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized. Okay. Get it together here in a minute. Gas and Water Committee report. Chairperson Redd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder, the required utility board training must be completed by the end of the calendar year to avoid possible disqualification for grant funding. If anybody has any question concerning the training, please contact Director Riggins. And I would just also like to say to keep Director Riggins and his family in your prayers. Mark Riggins, that's David Riggins, Father David Riggins, recently passed away. He was the long-term director of the RPC, and he was one of Clarksville's greatest, and he was here whenever I first got here, and he has gone way too soon, in my opinion. So please keep Director Riggins and his family in your prayers, and that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Redd. We're now ready for Neighborhood and Community Services Committee. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. The fiscal year 23-24 CDBG application process will begin on December 5th, 2022 and will close on January 10th, 2023. Prior to the application process opening, the Clarksville Neighborhood and Community Services will conduct 3 pre-application workshops, one of which will be conducted in Spanish. For more information about the application process and the pre-application workshops, please visit our website or contact Brittany Cates, Grants Analyst at 648-6133. The next Neighborhood and Community Services Council Committee meeting will be held on Monday, December 12th at 4:30 p.m. and that will be held in the conference room located on the 4th floor of City Hall. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any comment or question regarding this committee report? We're now ready for Parks and Recreation Committee. Chairperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, Parks and Recreation. Okay, so Parks and Recreation had a very busy November with almost 10,000 facility check-ins and 1,300 rounds of golf. All of the outdoor leagues are finishing up for the year. The Native Cultural Circles storytelling and dance event held at Fort Defiance was a huge success and will now be recurring event during Native American Heritage Month. The Veterans Day celebration had 135 participants and 126 people attended the Thanksgiving event, both held at the Kleeman Recreation Center. The department has several events coming up in December. The 63rd Annual Christmas Parade is this Saturday beginning at 5 p.m. in historic downtown Clarksville. It's a pretty big event. This year the theme is Christmas movies. It's a massive event and the parades are quite huge, so there are several holiday-themed events to choose from on December 10th, including the Elf Splash at New Providence Pool, a 19th century Christmas at Fort Defiance, and the Christmas Light Run, Santa's Paws, and a Visit with Santa, which will all be held at McGregor Park. And that concludes Parks and Recreation.
Thank you. Any comment or question regarding this committee report? Hearing none, we're ready for Public Safety Committee. Chairperson Alleman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, moving on to public safety. So first up, we've got CPD, and this is the type of calls that they got. It is not a crime report or like crimes being reported. It is simply someone picks up the phone, calls police for like a wellness checkup, whether it's traffic stops, warrants served. It's everything all together. Okay. So the number for this month was 11,167. The numbers for last month, I don't have them in front of me, but they're about 11,000. I try to look for the oddball one like I do every month, just because every month there's one thing, whether it's wellness checkups or smoke alarms going off. There's usually one that's kind of an oddball number, but this month it's kind of weird. If you do like plus or minus 15%, they all fall within the averages. So it was overall for CPD, this was a very average month. Let's see, we're going to move on to Clarksville Fire Rescue. So total calls Clarksville Fire Rescue responded to was 1,527. 71% of the calls were rescue or medical calls. There were 4 fire structures in November with an estimated $1.1 million worth of damage with a $2.5 million pre-incident value. Let's see. That includes Clarksville Fire Rescue. For the calls that they responded to, so they responded to about 1,500 calls. Last month they responded to 1,540. The month before that, 1,499. In August, it was 1,474. So if you can tell, this is a very average month overall for just about everything. Moving on to buildings and codes. All right, so Construction Division. We had 2,515 total inspections. Code Enforcement Division, 255 new cases. Abatement Division, 32 work orders. Over in the Admin Division, single-family permits issued, we had 30. Multifamily permits issued, 9. Commercial permits issued, 40. And that is up from last month. But that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any comment or question regarding the Public Safety Committee report? Seeing none, we're ready now for the Transportation Streets Garage Committee. Chairperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. The TSG reports are as follows. Clarksville Transit transported 4,384 passengers for the month of November. Senior citizens total for the month of November is 6,254. Demand response total for the month of November was 3,499. Don't forget that you can now purchase your bus fare from your smartphone, Deanna McLaughlin. Download the Token Transit app today. Next, we have the street department. Work orders completed for the month of November were 59 traffic street lights, 25 drainage repairs, 9 asphalt and concrete, 4 right-of-ways. Total number of work orders completed was 97. Limb and debris picked up, they picked up 379 limb pickups completed. Okay, I'm reading what they have written, okay? They are still accepting calls through December the 5th. If you need some limbs or something picked up in your yard, have them piled up and ready to go. The number to contact or to call is 931-472-3353. That's 931-472-3353. Planning Commission reviews are as follows: zoning 6, preliminary subdivisions 4, final subdivisions 5, site plan reviews 5, grading permits 13. We have 26 active capital projects ongoing. Paving activities, Montgomery Estates and Dale Terrace are completed. Dunbar Cave Road paving is ongoing, will be completed by December the 15th. Pollard Road is the next road to be paved. That concludes that report. We now move on to the city garage monthly report for November. The total number of work orders was 371. Fuel costs for unleaded in November on the 28th was $2.62. There was a 20% increase from $3.29. Fuel costs for diesel was $3.45 per gallon. The last delivery was November the 29th. There was a decrease of 29% from $4.84. This concludes my reports.
Thank you. Any comment or question regarding this committee report? Hearing none, seeing none, we're now ready for new business. First item under new business is ordinance 56, 2022-23, an ordinance amending the operating budgets for fiscal year 2023 for governmental funds, ordinance 146, 21-22, to remove funding for the Roxy Regional Theater. Councilperson Richmond, you are the sponsor and you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to take up item ordinance 56.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of ordinance 56. Councilperson Richmond.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to keep this brief. So one of the things that as I sat back and pondered this whole decision is I just want to share these brief points and then we can open it up to discussion. Let me just get my notes. As you've all read the ordinance, oh, there it is. I'd like to start off by saying that as I sit and listen to our discussion the other night, my main concern was that these are not, while these are allegations, these are not minor concerns. As I listened to the discourse between this body and the general public, I heard language that really deeply concerned me, that we're talking about mistakes, and there's a difference between mistakes and accountability. And so just as the ordinance states, we're not removing, I didn't create this ordinance to cover mistakes or to deal with a mistake. A mistake to me is you took a ream of copy paper. That's a mistake. And while it may be illegal, that's something that can be sort of tapped on the back of the hand and glossed over. But I just wanted to remind us as we get into the discussion tonight, these were numerous complaints of hostile work environment from our artistic community here in Clarksville, Tennessee. Many people don't know this, but I've personally had the opportunity to work at the Roxy and have witnessed a number of these items. Not to the extent that the victims came forward, but I've witnessed certain things that I didn't agree with, but they weren't egregious to the point of being against the law in my mind, meaning as a professional artist. So these are complaints from the fellow artistic community, of which I am one of, even though I'm not active in the community constantly. It's a half a dozen complaints we're talking here about a very concerning matter, alleging everything from racism, workplace bullying, retaliation, inappropriate touching, assault, sexual harassment, stalking, and inappropriate relationships with actors under the Roxy's employ. And so it brings to mind what the real matter is here, which is accountability. My concerns are removing this funding while we may not be able to legally act on the complainant's behalf. I do feel this body has a responsibility, sort of like a parental figure. I like to use just simple analogies. I don't know any parent who would allow their children to do but so much before they said, hey, mom and dad love you and we have to do something about this. We have to rectify this behavior. And accountability is really what this is about. Right now, as it currently stands, the Roxy answers to itself, which is a concerning issue for me. Coming from the theater world, this is why Actors Equity Association, which is a union for the artists, steps in to protect those who are not able to protect themselves. Unfortunately, this is a community of artists who, let's just be honest, I wouldn't have the funds to fight a legal battle if I were in this position. And so we stand as that opportunity to say, hey, we're just going to do something here because we believe in accountability. So over 30 years, the Roxy has been in existence. And my curiosity is, why haven't they joined the union? Why haven't they become a portion of the Actors Equity Association who would mitigate circumstances like this? So that's my main concern right now. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I think we have some amendments, but before we get to that, Councilperson Butler, you wish to address the ordinance before the amendments? I would like to, please. All right, you are recognized.
Okay. So I wrote it out too. First of all, I agree that the arts are important, but that is not what this is about. It is about an organization that receives our funding that I feel like we're responsible and accountable for, operating above reproach, as in so that they're not going to be scrutinized because it is done publicly. A speaker 2 nights ago mentioned they believe privacy had been violated regarding this issue. This body received complaints from no less than 5 individuals through our email, and it's all subject to open records. That is exactly why an organization receiving public funds must not tolerate any appearance of impropriety, because the public does have a right to scrutinize what they pay for. To remain above reproach, this investigation should have been conducted by a third party, especially due to what I can consider the severity of the accusations. And that's to protect both the accusers and the accused, both. The report, and this part is now this is my opinion, the report in itself, I read back over it again. It's written in a biased tone, and it even includes some disparity toward the accusers, as well as a gratuitous defense of the board members and director. The reality that actors may have experienced an inability to report transgressions while retaining the security of their positions was completely disregarded, and their claims were, in my opinion, devalued and dismissed. In fact, those with claims of sexual harassment are repeatedly chastised and invalidated for waiting an amount of time to report. That response to chastise someone for waiting to report could almost be cited as a model for the top reasons people don't report: denial, minimization, and a fear of repercussion. I feel that it would be blatantly obvious to someone reading the final findings that the people involved in the investigation were in no way suitable to do so, particularly the emotionally and personally invested chairperson. Not because they are bad people, but as multiple speakers Tuesday said, they're like a family. In my humble opinion, the investigation was not conducted as an impartial one, but rather a defense of the accused. Both the board and director agreed that inappropriate behavior happened. The director was counseled, formally reprimanded, but in his statement 2 nights ago, he berated the body for not knowing the difference between facts and allegations. I'm going to skip that part. That was me being emotional. I do find it absolutely disgusting that the preservation of arts, children, and LGBTQ community were, in my opinion, exploited for gain in this situation. This portion of my comments were added after I read through the text messages that we sent last night, or that we received yesterday. I read them last night. They were the text messages that were, word for word, invalidated in the final findings. The person was considered uncredible. They were hard to read as someone with past trauma in relationships, and actually triggering, like actually made me sick. This situation that we're in right now is probably, of everything we've done up here, the one that I find most morally repugnant. And I just wanted to make that super clear. Like this actually, and then I do have an amendment, but I'm gonna go ahead and let someone else who stole my thunder today do that. Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized on the original ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to speak in regard to the fact that, yes, there were, substantial allegations that were made against him. However, again, going back to this was investigated. This was looked into. They took all these complaints into consideration, and everything that was alleged, just because it was alleged doesn't mean everything did occur. I know we did receive quite a few text messages last night, but we were actually made aware of those text messages back, I'm not looking at my notes, I believe it was back in September that we were made aware of it, because we have been talking about this for so many months now. But the reason some of that had been kind of made non-credible was because those text messages had been altered from what was submitted. One side gave one set of texts, the other side gave texts that showed more. So there was text that had been taken out of those. So therefore, that kind of decreased the credibility of those texts that were turned in. I want to remind everybody that this funding was voted on for our budget back earlier this year. When it was voted for, part of that was to be able to create more positions. And one of those positions that has been created is the HR director, which is who we all believe, based on things we've heard and based on what the board believes, that they do need an HR director, which does give the community there within the Roxy someone to be able to go to, somebody that is trained and knows how to handle these types of situations. When you talk about taking away the funding, then you don't agree with what's going on, but yet you want to take away the funding that supports that person that is there to support the employees. So I would ask that we vote against this tonight and move forward so that we aren't still continuing to drag both the accusers and the person being accused through the mud, because this is what we've been talking about it for months and months and months. I think we are at a point in time where we do need to try and move on from this situation.
Councilperson Zacharias, on the ordinance,
Yes, sir.
you are recognized.
All right, I'm just going to apologize in advance because this is long, and everybody sitting on this side of the room already has access to this information, but it has become clear through my discussion with constituents that the general consensus seems to be that allegations were made and nothing was done about it. So I've prepared a lot of words. All right, so tonight we're being asked whether to cut city funding to the Roxy in response to its executive committee's response to allegations made by its executive director. We have all had the opportunity to review the results of the committee's investigation. We have all received direct communication from those making the complaints. The allegations have received plenty of attention, while the results of the investigation have received very little, if any. And yet, this case appears to have already been tried and a verdict issued in the court of public opinion. As my colleague read during Tuesday's executive session, we have received an email from a respected member of the community letting us know how our votes on this issue will be interpreted. I reached out to that person and asked if they had reviewed the results of the investigation. They confirmed that they had not. Let me be clear. If I were in the position of that constituent, not having access to the investigation report, I would likely share their opinion. But having had the opportunity to review the investigation findings, I feel this issue is not as cut and dry as some people would like to have people believe. This investigation centers around allegations by several former employees of the Roxy. The first employee alleges the director was rude and unprofessional, that he was engaged in a consensual relationship with a member of the company, and that he required members of the cast and crew to work long hours. Ultimately, the executive committee found that there was nothing actionable in this employee's letter, as the issues, including the referenced consensual relationship, had been addressed and resolved in the 3 years that had passed between the cast member's employment by the Roxy and the writing of this letter. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but there were no no allegations of sexual misconduct or sexual harassment in that complaint. Simply long hours and rude and unprofessional behavior. 4 months later, 2 different Roxy employees approached the board with concerns about a stressful and negative work environment. In response, the Roxy's board implemented procedures to facilitate the receipt of human resources concerns. About this time, a 4th employee wrote a letter alleging the director's abuse of a different employee and opined that this abuse was the reason for them leaving the Roxy. That employee was contacted as part of the investigation and not only declined to mention the director's treatment as a factor for him leaving, but also indicated that they would like to return to the Roxy in the future. The investigation also found that many of the claims in this letter are contradicted by emails and text messages provided during the investigation. The final allegation, and certainly the most troubling in my view, is from a 5th employee and is an allegation of sexual harassment by the executive director. While a text exchange between the complainant and the director was viewed by the investigators as being mutually flirtatious, I believe that is a subjective assessment, and I think we should be careful either assigning or absolving somebody of responsibility based on a personal interpretation of somebody's intent. What is not in question, though, is the fact that when the director was told by the employee that he was not interested in a romantic relationship, the director offered to let the board president know that he acted inappropriately and was discouraged from doing so by the person making the sexual harassment allegation. The complainant offered to provide screenshots and recordings supporting his claims. The executive committee reviewed a recording of a conversation and found nothing that was unethical or unprofessional. The employee alleging sexual harassment also provided screenshots of the text exchange between himself and the director, but not before deleting reactions and altering the text thread. The executive committee found, in order to promote a more inclusive and sensitive workplace, that several steps be taken. The formal written reprimand has already been discussed or mentioned tonight. An intimacy choreographer would be trained and included in future productions. The staff would receive HR training. An HR point of contact would be appointed to handle complaints from the staff. The HR point of contact would regularly brief the board of directors on future allegations and track the status of the staff's training goals. And finally, the executive director would be reevaluated in 6 months, which is not until February of next year. So this is a summary of the 16 pages of documents detailing the results of the investigations into these allegations. This is what we have had to look over and consider since this issue was first raised. I believe the ordinance to cut funding to the Roxy is, at the very least, premature, since the Roxy hasn't even had time to implement and evaluate the measures put in place to improve working conditions at the Roxy. Furthermore, the for a large portion of the city's contribution, you stole my thunder. All right, furthermore, the justification for a large portion of the city's contribution to the Roxy's annual budget was to hire new employees. Cutting this funding only makes it more difficult for the Roxy to achieve the type of meaningful change to the workload shouldered by the company members. I'm asking you all to please vote no on this ordinance at this time. Thank you.
Councilperson Redd, you're recognized on the ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor. And I too have notes that I'll go over. I'll go a lot slower. I'd like to say that that we have in this body already considered the future, our future, with the Roxy Theater. We already signed the lease contract with Roxy Productions. The timing of this proposal makes me question why now. If this has been going on for so long, the attempt should have been made earlier whenever this came to light or before today. And colleagues, just let me say this. Whenever we cast votes, we make agreements and we sign leases, we just can't go back on our word, or we shouldn't. People, you see, they believe in the vote that we make. They make plans from the votes that we make and that we codify. And many of these people in the Roxy Theaters and others, they've planned from this decision that we made. And this vote might have not gone your way originally. And you might not have been on the prevailing side. I know that I wasn't. But nonetheless, the contracts are signed, the parties are in agreement, and I respected the will of the body and its vote, and I believe everyone here should. We should not renege on a promise and the rental agreements and the other agreements that has been made in this case. You might not like how this board, as my colleague said earlier, of the allegations that and how this board has handled this case that's been before it. But it's my understanding from the emails that I've received and published reports and the testimonies, there's been a complete investigation regarding these allegations, not once, but twice. And I don't think that we sat there because we are not members of this Roxy Productions. And let me say, I've known Stacy Turner ever since the time that I first was sworn in to this council, and I can testify to her honesty and integrity. And when she says that due process was given from this 21-member board, I trust her findings and I trust their findings from the board. And let me ask you, would it be right if a member of the council was found in a discrepancy and calls were made maybe to defund the entire council? Would that be right? Would you want that, to have perhaps your pay defunded and just punish all of us? That wouldn't be right. In our system in the U.S., we are said to be innocent until proven guilty, and we get a chance to face our accusers. The Lord said, those of you who are without sin can cast the first stone. In this case, we will be casting the stone to the guilty and to the innocent at the exact same time. Thank you for your time, Mayor.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
I call for the question, Mayor.
Question's been called for, properly seconded. Any objection to the question? Okay, we'll put it on the board. We're voting to cease discussion on the main motion or the main ordinance. 2/3, Mr. Becker. We're voting to cease discussion on ordinance 56. All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
3 yes, 8 no, 0 abstain. 3 no, 9 no, 0 abstain.
Motion fails. We're back on discussion. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, I would like first to address the people who had the courage to write the letters and come forward. As a woman who joined the Army at 1980 at 17 years old, and the only person I could complain to or have a conversation with because I was being harassed or hooted and hollered as I ran down around base was the company commander who drank with the guys that were hooting and hollering from the truck. So I would caution you in the Me Too movement that there's a lot of Me Too in this. You don't wait, you shut up, you put up until you can't stand it any longer, or until you get in a corner and you can't get out. So I just wanted to put that out there. I just want to caution that we understand that there are people on both sides that have been affected. I would like to move past the, how do I say, what really happened and look forward. When I met with Ms. Turner, my conversation, I really redirected her. She wanted to have the conversation about what happened and what the board did. And I want the conversation to be about how are we going to implement zero tolerance and make sure that this doesn't happen again. I think the board has only been part of our community for a year or so, and everything's public now. They're not used to that. They are still, I mean, it takes practice, and they do owe accountability, and they didn't before. So there was a comment made the other night, like they were surprised that all of this became so public and they felt that it was invasion of privacy, but it's not. You're part of the city now, whether you like it or not. You have to be transparent. Transparency is important. With that said, I do think that they are working on that. I received everything green, a very long letter from a board member, and what they outlined was a few of the steps that they've taken. For the executive director will no longer act, but will only direct. The board members will no longer have leading roles in plays. The director will no longer text actors after hour. The executive director will no longer have late hour meetings. The plays have been decreased. The schedule has been diminished. A marketing position was created. An educational director was hired. They hired a full-time HR person. And the Roxy has undergone training. What I asked when I sat down with the chair, Ms. Turner, was show me in writing. I see that you're doing this. I want to see in writing the policies. I want to see in writing the chain of where I can go. And I want to see that the HR doesn't report to the director. I want to see, fair documentation. And my conversation with her at the time was, I'm going to come back before June, and if I'm not satisfied, if you're not open, you don't share your documentation, and I still am not satisfied that you have set in practice what you've told me, then I'm going to, probably listen when they start talking about not paying your funding. I have a concern that we're being a little short-sighted. I think we need to continue the pressure and the conversation, and I think that the Roxy owes us some true. Here's my handbook. Here's my new policies. I was concerned, but I've received a couple emails. This is in writing. I'm open to a conversation, but I hear everything and I see all the sides. But if we take the money away, which was stated when we gave them the money that they were going to use it to hire people and to fund benefits, I think if we take that away, then we're going to affect the long-term ability for them to succeed and do better. That's what I have to say.
Okay, we still have two amendments, but we're on the main motion. Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
So, the first thing I'd like to say is that on Thursday night, I listened to everyone. I listened to everyone that came up and spoke in the mic. I had already had a few conversations with Ms. Turner. I had talked to several of the ledge. We're saying, why did this just come up if it's been happening for a while? The fact of the matter is we just learned about all this. As a council, we just learned about all this. I think it was September that we learned about all this stuff going on, and we received some emails. So this is what I'll tell you. The other night I heard that it was about taking the arts away from the children, and it's not. Without the $77,000, the Roxy will not fail. The Roxy is doing great. It is not about LGBTQIA. The council is not targeting the director because he is in the community, in that community. As an ally of that community, I was wholeheartedly offended by that, because that is not what it's about. That is not why we're standing here. As for the allegations, they're allegations. There were some findings. However, my issue with the entire findings was it was not done by a third party. So, After speaking to Ms. Turner yesterday, after speaking to one of the alleged yesterday, I have been told that there is a formal investigation happening through the federal government. I think that we would jump the gun if we voted on this and suspended funds today. I think that we should wait until those funds are, until those, that investigation is done. And then those findings will be given back to us. And then at that point, we'll see what happens. I think that it would be unfair to say, let's vote down this today because we need to move forward. Well, it hasn't moved forward. There's a whole investigation happening that's starting on January 10th next year. Okay, so we haven't not moved forward. This is still happening. We also cannot just take the funding and give it to someone else because it is in fact funding that we allocated to them. So I move to amend Ordinance 56, 2022-23 by deleting the current language of the last operative paragraph.
Motion been made and properly seconded on the amendment. Mr. Baker, before I call on the sponsor to explain the amendment.
You can't just delete that. Are you wanting to add something?
Oh, we're going to add something. Sorry.
Yeah.
And inserting the following. I was going to say all that, but I felt like it was getting too much for my motion.
You are recognized.
Before you do, let me just confer with.
Okay, Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
So I'm sorry about that. Me and Mr. Baker had to consult for a minute.
That's okay.
We were not on the same sheet of music. So what this amendment will do is it will just cease the funding. So in the Roxy budget, there's still $777,000 ready for them to take on. So in January, if in January, once the findings come back, it comes back to the tables, we review the findings, and we see what a true independent third party said about what has happened at the Roxy. That money will still be the Roxy's. They will just not get a check until after the investigation is complete. And the reason why I did it that way is because I did not want to say, let's just take all the funding, because once it's gone, it's gone. And we would have to vote to put it back in. However, with this way, it's still their funding. It's still allocated to them. They, in the long run, we'll review the findings and we'll see what comes out of this independent investigation. And I'm hoping that this is a middle ground to what everybody's feeling about this situation. And the reason why I say that is because the fact of the matter is everybody is held accountable. If you do something on your job, you're held accountable. And at this point, we were asked by the alleged to do an investigation. We cannot do that as a council. However, the federal government can, and they've already started the process. And I ask that we just simply wait. We just simply wait and let them do their investigation, and then we come back to the table. That is my amendment.
Mr. Baker?
There's a part of it that was cut off here. So have you passed it out? Has everybody got a copy?
Yes, everyone has a copy.
So read along with me, if you would, please. The city shall cease all future, Yes.
Yes, this is the Allen Amendment.
The city shall cease all future funding or payments under the current fiscal year budget to Roxy Productions Inc. until such time as a current ongoing equal employment opportunity commission mediation and possible, and you can strike the word possible because she's confirmed it with Ms. Turner. So strike the word and possible, just say ongoing equal employment opportunity commission mediation, and investigating, just strike the word possible. Mediation investigate into an employment discrimination charge filed by a former Roxy Production Inc. employee. And then this is what got cut off. Add the words is completed and reported to the city council. Is completed and reported to the city council. Is that correct, CC member Allen?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay, you've heard the motion and second for this amendment. I have a list. I'm going to go down the list. If you want to speak to this amendment, Councilperson Holloman on the amendment.
I'm going to speak on the main motion. Thank you.
Okay. Councilperson Marquis on the amendment.
Yes.
You are recognized.
Okay, so pretty much, since this investigation is supposed to be completed in January, depending on what they find, I guess, to play devil's advocate, just to figure out how to move forward. Let's say they do find something, do we then have to just bring back a whole new ordinance? Is that how that would work in the future? It's like,
Mr. Baker, you want to answer that question?
That is what I believe this contemplates, yes. You get the report and then you'll have to make a decision. You know, if the report absolves the Roxy, absolves Mr. Bowie, then
then
you can restore the funding. If it doesn't absolve him, then you can make a decision about whether what the finding is bad enough to continue the suspension,
Okay.
or to just have a new ordinance to totally deleting the funding.
Councilperson Marquis.
okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Baker.
And just let me say this, just don't forget that, I forgot to read the top part. What you would be doing with this amendment is deleting the last operative paragraph under the Richmond ordinance and substituting the Allen language, okay? The whereases will stay the same.
Okay.
Hang on a minute. Councilperson Marquis has the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Baker. I guess just in real quick on my side, I would be for waiting until an investigation, a third party, federal at that point, comes forth, so that we can see what's happening, and it does give us more time to, I guess, understand the matter. Because I mean, there are some questions that I do have that, from what I found out yesterday till today, that I haven't had the chance to really dig deeper into it, and I like that there's a third party coming in that possibly could also answer other questions as well. So yeah, I would be for waiting a little bit. Thank you.
Councilperson Richmond on the Allen amendment.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Baker, I just want to be crystal clear. You said to replace the last sentence. Is that to mean the be it further ordained, the above funds will return to the, could you just clarify which last sentence?
Who's got a copy? I've got it up.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so the last whereas will remain, and then it follows, now therefore be it ordained by the city council of the city of Clarksville, Tennessee. All of the rest of that would be deleted. The numbers, basically, all that other language under the now therefore line, and it would be replaced by this language of Councilmember Allen.
Okay.
That's what she requested.
Councilperson Richmond, you have the floor.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Baker. And I guess I have a question to the sponsor of the amendment. So a cease versus a remove. And so is it like a contingency? Contingent upon?
That's a question to the sponsor. You are recognized, sponsor Allen.
So what I would say is, well, I don't want to talk about any of the strategies that either
Sure.
party has, but I would say that what would happen is it would just be suspended. That means they just wouldn't get a check that month. That's it. Until all this is settled. And the reason why I did it this way is because my concern was if we just postponed it till February, they might not have the findings. Now, what I'll tell you with a federal investigation, what happens, because I've done many of them, what happens is they won't just do findings. They'll do further recommendations also of different things that they're going to recommend to the Roxy that they could do differently and to rectify the situation. They're going to make their own recommendations also. So it might take them some time to get that in writing into the Roxy. A federal investigation can take 3 to 6 months, and I don't know what step in the process they're in at this point.
Yeah, let's get back to Councilperson Richmond, your questions.
Thank you, Mayor. That does satisfy my question. Looking over my notes. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Because I like to capitalize on when I act reasonably. I did, and because I want you guys to know, a previous speaker mentioned that you might have brought this up, me or someone, because we lost on the defunding of the Roxy. And I want to make it really clear that this is not about money for me, not this particular time. So I did also write an amendment doing pretty much the same thing that my colleague did, with the exception that I actually did not know that there was already an investigation going on. So I will not be presenting my amendment because it would be moot at this point. And I guess I would just encourage everyone to vote yes on this, because a previous speaker said we need to get past this. The sponsor of this said we're not past it. I would urge everyone to consider the fact that the feds thought it was still worth looking into. And the accuser, a previous speaker said that we should move on for the accusers, but it is the accusers that have asked us as late as yesterday to continue to pursue this. And because it is being done so on the federal level, I would ask that you guys vote in favor of this amendment. Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman on the amendment.
On the amendment.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So if I'm understanding this correctly, and I may need to ask for some assistance here, this would be removed. This would no longer be a budget amendment as it's written now, because it's not putting the money to the general fund. And also, I'm not sure that if we're ceasing all their funding, if they would, I don't see really how it's doing anything different. It's just no longer a budget amendment. And I don't know that we would just get to hold those funds for them and give it to them at a later date.
Those are good points and questions. I think this, in the sense that however the finance department has been paying the money, like what I mean by that is on what schedule, you could call it a budget amendment, I suppose. But the budget actually, and Ms. Mott,
I would actually like to hear from Ms. Mott on this.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it allocates, I believe, a certain sum of money. And does it break it down that we're going to pay it? Yeah, we tell them how we're going to do that. But that's not, and what I'm saying is that's not how, or the budget ordinance, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't contain the language about how often we're going to pay you or anything like that. You want to interrupt me? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask the mayor if we could actually have Ms. Mata come up and talk about it, since it's relating to the budget.
Okay.
Okay. We'll allow the question. Ms. Matta, if you would, please come up and address the question. Councilperson Streetman, if you would, ask the question.
Trying
Ms.
to
Madden.
ask, in regard to, it was stated that the funding could be held until an investigation was done and that we come back. And so we're not really taking the funding away from them. They could get it back later. And this no longer being a budget amendment is all that, I mean, to me, it would no longer be a budget amendment. Is it true that we could just hold the money and give it to them at a later date?
So in my opinion, from my finance side of the world, I do not believe this is any longer a budget amendment because a budget amendment appropriates funds. This is not appropriating funds. There's also a piece in the budget that you all approved that says I make the decisions on how we pay nonprofits. I could have paid them July 1st for the entire year. And we do that because council should never direct us what we could cut a check for and what we can't, because we could get into trouble, because there's laws that we have to comply with, there's deadlines that we have to meet. So that's why you have me, is to make those decisions. And in the nonprofit thing, it used to say years ago about how things would be paid monthly. Well, remember the warm coats for souls?
Warm souls.
Yeah, that project. They would cut those checks monthly, a little bit, and they only got like $1,000 for the whole year. Well, by the time they needed the coats in November for the event, they didn't have the money. So it doesn't make sense to pay it on a definite schedule. There has to be some discretion, and that discretion is with my office. So I make the decisions when they get paid, and then this is not a budget amendment anymore because you're not amending our budget document. There's nothing in there that you're amending with this.
Councilperson Streetman.
Let me add to that. I agree with everything she just said. But let me add this. So what this does is it creates a later enacted ordinance that's enacted after the budget ordinance that affects what can be done under the budget ordinance. We could have added language notwithstanding what the budget ordinance says, blah, 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 but it's not really necessary. This carries the weight and effect of law, and the CFO will have to comply with that, meaning that if this passes this language, she cannot make any more payments this fiscal year until and unless the city receives the investigation report. I want to explain something to you about this because I don't want you coming back on me later and y'all going, well, that ain't what you said, or you didn't tell us that. When there is an employee that makes a charge of illegal employment discrimination and they submit it to the EEOC then sends a notice letter to the employer and says, okay, we've received a charge of employment discrimination from one of your employees or former employees, and now you've got to prepare your own internal investigation report and submit it to us. And the city's been through this many times. Then the employer does their own internal investigation and they submit a written report to the EEOC. Then the EEOC looks at everything that's been submitted by the employee and people they say they're witnesses and the documentation submitted by the employer. And they can do, at that point, they can do one of two things. One is they can order that the party, or they don't order, rather, I strike that. They can request, and they can pretty strong arm you. They can request that you enter into a mediation prior to any lawsuit being filed with the employee. And what happens in that mediation is a EEOC investigator meets with the employee or employees that have filed the charge and representatives of the employer, and they try to bring the parties together to compromise. And one of the things they try to do is say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. Are you willing to enter an order with the federal government saying you're going to take all these remedial steps? Oftentimes what happens, though, is with the employee is they're like, okay, that all sounds really great, but I want some money. And That's where the negotiations often break down. Uh, uh, Sometimes the employee will, or the employer will agree to pay some money, but most often what happens is the numbers are far apart. And so what happens then is, and the second step is the EEOC then says, okay, we're going to make a decision now about whether we think that there is in fact illegal employment discrimination. And if we think there is, and we think it's bad enough, we're going to file our own lawsuit as the United States government against the employer and say you're in violation of our employment laws. But and we've never had that happen at the city. What usually happens is they say, well, we can't make a determination because it's kind of he said, she said. We can't make a determination about what the full, complete truth is. And so we're going to decline to pursue a lawsuit ourselves, but we're going to issue what's called a 90-day right to sue letter, so that that employee then has a right to sue in federal court for employment discrimination. And that letter from the EEOC is a prerequisite. You have to get that before you can file a lawsuit in federal court. So the reason why I'm telling you all this is at the end of the mediation, what might happen is there is no report. All that may happen is they may just say, well, we're not going to pursue this. Obviously, if they make a decision to file their own lawsuit, you can better believe that they feel like there's strong evidence of illegal employment discrimination. They don't just willy-nilly, the federal government, file lawsuits about this stuff. But if they decline to get involved, that doesn't necessarily mean that there is illegal employment discrimination or that there's not. But what they won't do is issue an investigative report. All right. So what I'm trying to tell you is, once the mediation is done, we may not really have any real answers. We may just be in limbo and back to where we started. You got the accused or the accuser saying one thing. You got the accused saying something different. The way this is written, once we get some kind of report, and it may not be an investigative report, it may simply be that 90-day letter. Then the way this is written, the CFO could restart the funding, because the way it's written is once we get something, then she can start the funding. If you want to say, well, we're going to have to change the language, because now what I think I'm hearing is, no, we want to see what gets produced, and then we want to make a new decision. So if that's what you want, then this is going to have to be massaged a little. Because there's all this uncertainty swirling about this, I'm going to suggest to you that maybe the best thing to do tonight is to simply postpone this ordinance 1 month and let me try to draft something that maybe meets the sponsor's intent better.
Councilperson Streetman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I also take concern. I have concerns with this because of the fact, typically, I thought your Equal Employment Opportunity Commission investigations, the fact that I'm surprised we're really even talking about this openly here tonight, because I thought there was usually confidentiality involved with that. So I'm not even sure at the end, who is it that's supposed to be would even be giving us that report? Because again, I think there's confidentiality involved. So, I have concerns with that part as well. So I don't think we should postpone. I think we should actually just vote this amendment down, not only for the confusion, but again, to protect the confidentiality of everyone involved.
Councilperson Red, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I agree with our attorney that we should probably postpone this, and he could take time with the sponsor of the amendment there to put this the way he wants to. Second, how much, clarify, how much oversight do we have over the Roxy Board? This is not a department like gas and water or the street department. And
It's a nonprofit organization. They're required to have, by virtue of our agreement with them, they're required to have an audit, financial audit, and submit that to us each year. We have a council member that's appointed to that board. Ms. Matta is ex officio, but attends their board meetings just to watch over our financial investment in that organization. So, but it's still up to the board. They're an independent nonprofit organization.
so they can't go to our EEOC
No,
with a complaint and
No.
go through those procedures because they're not employees of the city, correct?
that's right. That's right.
But that's just my thoughts. I think it'd be a good idea if Lance and the one that made the motion to, for this amendment to get together, that, I think that would be wise. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized on the amendment.
Yes, I would like to ask, even as, whether we pass the amendment or not, I'd like to verify that our overarching goal is to see policies and procedures put in place at the Roxy that prevent this from happening in the future, and they've started that. So say it takes 4 or 5 months, but they present, these are our new policies. This is what we're doing to make sure this doesn't happen again. Is there a path for them to come address us, show us what they're doing and what they've done? So not that we would move on from the allegations, that's a separate, but to understand that they're doing all that they can as a board and a community to make sure it doesn't happen again. How do we do that?
We could schedule a presentation from the board chair to the council at an executive session for them to review it and for us to ask questions.
The mayor could just simply issue an invitation saying, look, there's still a lot of concern about this. And the council has expressed an interest in hearing from the chair of the board or the executive committee and come give a presentation about what you're doing and make sure these kind of stuff, if they're true, that they never happen again, and that you got policies in place. The only real power you have, and I've told you all this, is the power of the purse.
Thank you. Councilperson Reynolds, you have the floor.
So I would like to direct my question back to the sponsor of the amendment. Do you like, just for instance, we pass this, we hold the money, but in 2 or 3 months they come and present, this is what we're doing, this is what we've put in place, here's our employee handbook, here's our for lack of a better word, chain of command. This is how it works. If there's is that part of your vision to say, okay, we can restart the money? Or because this is tied to the case, and I think if we just if we just tie it to an individual in a case, we're not going to fix the big picture.
It's a question to the sponsor.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
I'm more
didn't mean to
curious.
interrupt.
I'm more worried for the big picture. So I wonder what
Councilperson
you
Allen,
think of
you're the
that.
sponsor. You're recognized.
So this is my thing. Before when a third party investigation happens, before you can say, this is what needs to change in our HR policies, this is what needs to change in our HR policies, you have to have a true indication of what is happening in your agency. That's why a lot of agencies let, third parties come in to do audits on their HR, because sometimes people are not willing to say the things to their leadership that they would say to an independent person. So there may be things that are recommended through this investigation that will help get those HR policies up and running the way that they need to be. And I'm not saying that it's not our job to tell the Roxy what to do, but we, like they said, this is the only power we have.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want to, I'm not, but what I'm saying is they've already began began addressing issues and making, like, they didn't have an HR person when this was happening. And so now I'd like to know what the HR person's job is. I'd like to see their duty description, and I'd like to see how they, what in writing is their policy. Like, I would like to read that to make sure. So even if they're already addressing overall what was the allegations to prevent them in the future, I just want to make sure that we have a pathway for that conversation, and that that we don't tie ourselves to a court case, that they could fix everything or really come forward with really true resolutions that would allow us to say, okay, we're gonna and are you, and when we write that, I would like that option, because then it just, instead of we can't vote until my concern is, I don't want this to say we can't vote or we can't restore it until the court case is done, because that may take whatever, but they have to present and we have to agree to restart.
So January
question?
10th
Okay.
is the day that they go to mediation. January 10th, in a few weeks.
But what if the person decides to sue?
That would be his decision. At that point, then our decision would be to make our decision.
Okay, Mr. Baker, is there, how will you as our lawyer be able to verify what happened and where the court case is at?
So the records are at the EOC
They're
are going to be public records.
Okay.
And if there is a settlement through the mediation, there will be some documentation to that effect, and that will be public records. You could also just simply ask the Roxy board to provide it. I don't see why they wouldn't. They're not legally obligated to, but if they want their money, they would. And then the other thing is if there's a failure of settlement at the mediation, then obviously the next step, if the complainant or complainants want to pursue it, they could file a lawsuit in federal court in Nashville, and that would be a public record as well.
But
In the mediation, it's possible that the EEOC may issue something that looks like and reads like an investigative report, which could help inform your decision making. But I want you to be aware that it's also possible that all they do is it's a form letter that they use over and over, and it just says, we're unable to determine whether or not there is or is not illegal discrimination.
But you'll be able to see that. That was my question.
And then if that letter issues, it will be a public document.
Okay.
We could just ask the Roxy to let us know what happens one way or another, and then you could revisit this.
Okay.
Councilperson Reynolds, you have the floor.
Mayor, I would like, if for you or Councilperson Shekinab, who's on the board, to invite or request the board to present. I don't want to get into I want to see what their policies are. I want to see what they've put in place. I want to see their short-term and their long-term goals, and how they have addressed, not how they're going to implement their HR policies.
I will make that request to the board chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilperson Holloman on the amendment.
Yes, thank you,
You're
Mayor.
recognized.
So just to put this in simple terms, this is pretty much like we just had an election. I mean, could you imagine a bunch of people getting around and then accusing the mayor of something, and then the state turn around saying, hey, we're going to defund Clarksville. We're not going to maintain our state roads because of all these accusations going against Mayor Pitts. That's pretty much the scenario that we're in with the Roxy. But I would appreciate if everyone voted no on the amendments, and I will be voting no on the main motion. Thank you.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. To the previous speaker and multiple speakers that have said that, I call that a false equivalency. I don't think we should be making a comparison that but my comment was, I just wanted to make it kind of clear that, I don't know about the rest of you, but if there's a federal investigation and that is completed and they are like, we got nothing, I have no intention of rehashing this again. My concern is that the investigation that was done by people entirely too close to the situation. I am not a subject matter expert. I do not think that we should be making these decisions at all. But because we were brought into it, I think we have to do our due diligence and we have to be accountable to the public whose money it is. And like I said, I have no want to hash this out again after that. So we can leave it exactly as it is, where it turns back on when we get the results. And then if it comes back with something so egregious that we feel the need to, we can just present another ordinance. That's my opinion. Please vote yes on this amendment. I like it how it is. Thank you.
Councilperson Allen, you're recognized on your amendment.
So I just wanted to address a previous council member when they said about confidentiality and privacy. As you see, I did not state the name of the person that filed the allegation. I did not state it, not at all. And I let him know that it would be confidential and I would not state it. I also only got the information because when I talked to Ms. Turner about, would they be interested in doing a third-party investigation? She said, I've never had a problem doing a third-party investigation. In fact, this is what's going on right now. So there's one coming, and they're going to look at everything. And that's why I said, oh, well, this will solve a lot of issues that we're having, because some people think that it's very difficult to investigate yourself. And if she's open to the third party investigation, you know what I'm saying? And she clearly told me about it. I don't understand why we wouldn't say, okay, let's put this on pause until this investigation is done, so that everybody's questions will be answered. Hopefully. Thank you.
Councilperson Redd, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is my second time on the amendment. But in light of the, learning about, there's been now an investigation and a lot of other stuff that I've learned about what we've been talking about tonight, I think that we would be wise to vote down this particular amendment. Not that the amendment is bad or anything, but as the attorney said, maybe the sponsor of the amendment can get with our attorney and make it a little better. And then we postpone this after we vote this amendment down for a month. The phrase was made that we were brought into this. And I'm not certain exactly what was meant by that, but we've got other boards too, and maybe And as we discussed, we're not over the boards. And yes, I guess maybe we could pull funding, but it's problematic if there has funding already been given, and we've already made contracts and design contracts and that sort of thing, and then you go to pull them in rental contracts. But in any case, I think we would be wise to postpone this a month. So therefore, I'm going to vote no on this amendment, but whenever it comes back the next time after it's reviewed by the council, I might vote for it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilperson Richmond on the amendment.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like us to, as a previous speaker stated, what we've been asked to do is to represent. We are constituents as well. The city of Clarksville owns the Roxy, if I'm not mistaken. It belongs to the taxpayers. And we have been elected to represent taxpayers, voters. And a previous speaker said to simplify this. Court, outside of court, we're beyond that. A resident has invited its representatives to speak on their behalf. And as we heard from our city attorney, this is the only recourse we have to speak. I believe in this amendment. I think it's smart. I agree with previous speakers around this idea of the leadership and the big picture. We talked about the big picture. I agree that with the sponsor of this amendment that the issue that the Roxy executive director agrees on is that the investigation was not done by an outside third party. I ask that you support this amendment, not because of personality, our opinion, but solely on the fact that voters own this building and have asked us to get involved, and this is the only way we have to get involved. I will be voting this amendment forward, and I ask that you do the same. Thank you.
Councilperson Markey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess it's a question for Mr. Baker. If let's say, if this amendment passes, let's say, but then because several members have asked to postpone the ordinance, in order to, I guess, reword this amendment, is that what was advised earlier?
It was a response from Mr. Baker, recommendation
Yes.
from Mr. Baker, I believe. Mr. Baker, you're
My
recognized.
concern is, in thinking all this through and hearing the comments, is that the language we have right now, even with those additions I asked y'all to make earlier, it's not clear what happens given the way the EEOC operates.
Okay.
So I think we need to add some flesh on it and some detail because, all right, let's say at the mediation that they settle it. All right, well, you can get that back, but does that mean, okay, then we're going to start paying them again?
Okay.
It doesn't really say that. Then let's say at the mediation that they don't settle and the federal government says, okay, we're going to file our own lawsuit. All right, that might mean that you want to cease all funding, for at least the rest of this fiscal year. But let's say the federal government, and I think this is probably the most likely scenario, is that the EEOC investigator says can't determine what the truth is, and therefore we're not going to get involved, and we're just going to go ahead and issue the right to sue letter. Well, okay, what happens then? If all the council's got to go on come January, late January, is just the right to sue letter, that doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you that the accused is wrong. It doesn't tell you the accusers are wrong.
Okay, Councilperson Markey.
Okay. And then, in your opinion, if this was to be the original one to be postponed, would February be an accurate deadline, I guess, to bring it back?
It's my suggestion that you at least put it off beyond the mediation to see what happens at the mediation. But sometimes you could say, well, okay, let's put this off to the February regular session. And hopefully, you would have more information. At least the mediation would have been conducted. But sometimes the mediations get rescheduled. So I can't guarantee you that you're going to have an answer.
Councilperson Markey.
Okay. Thank you. This is a situation that's gotten kind of complex all around, and I do want to wait for the investigation to have better detail on the situation, and I understand that with the timeline, it does make it difficult to figure out when these funds will be made available. I don't know. It's a difficult decision to make right now. Thank you.
Councilperson Allen, you are recognized.
I just want to do a point of clarity. A previous speaker just said that we're in contracts and rents and leases. That's nothing that's being touched with this. It is just the $77,000 that's left from their operating budget money. That is it. There's no leases. There's nothing like that being touched. Just a point of clarity.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I'd like to clarify that if we pass this tonight, even knowing that it has to be massaged, it's got to have a second vote. So I hear that Mr. Baker says it needs to be fixed, but we could, rather than kill it, we could pass it and then come back with better language after we do the research. That puts it into next month instead of 2 more months out. So I want the Roxy and I want people to know that whatever my vote is, whatever, I know that you get a second vote. And I just want to make that clear. So it's not the final vote tonight.
Anyone else on the amendment? Councilperson Richmond, you've already spoken twice on the amendment. I've got 2 check marks by your name, sir, on the amendment. I'm keeping tabs. All right, anybody else wish to speak on the amendment? You've spoken. All right. Anyone else wish to speak on the amendment that hasn't spoken twice? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote on the Allen amendment? Every member vote. Madam Clerk, take the vote.
6 yes, 6 no, 0 abstain.
Amendment fails. We're back on the second amendment, or we have a list here. We still have an amendment. Councilperson Marquis has an amendment. I'm going to recognize her for her amendment, and then we'll get back to the list.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, like I said, I'd rather wait for this to come out with more detail from the federal investigation. So I'd rather motion to postpone this until February. Yeah, February regular session. Yeah.
So we're motion is to postpone ordinance 56 to February regular session?
Yes.
Properly seconded. We've got a list. Councilperson Richmond, did you wish to speak to the motion to postpone?
No, it was just left on.
Councilperson Allen, did you wish to speak to the motion to postpone?
Yes, I agree with postponing it. I do not think we need to make a decision, period. Whether you're for it or against it, we do not need to make a decision until after we have a third-party investigation. So yes, I'm for postponement.
Councilperson Butler, on the motion to postpone,
Yes, sir.
you are recognized.
Now my brain just stopped. Yeah, nope. I forgot what I was gonna say. I'm sorry.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak to the motion to postpone? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote on the motion to postpone till February regular session 2023? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
7 yes, 5 no, 0 abstain.
Motion to postpone is adopted. Postponed until February. We're now on item 2, city council membership on boards and committees. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Oh, not the other business yet? Okay.
No, that's item 2.
Okay, sorry. All right, so I have I kind of did a chart. I went through the committees and I wanted to put down who has committees. In the past, when we were first elected, before we could before sunshine laws, we could have a conversation with the mayor about what we were interested in for what boards and committees. But since that's an item we have to vote on, it has to be done in the public. So I wanted to take an opportunity. First, I would like to ask the mayor to please consider breaking up the Streets, Garage, and Transportation Committee. I think that's a big chunk. The streets, they've gotten a lot of extra money and they have a lot of projects. And I think that we should update the sidewalk ordinance. So I think breaking these up would allow us to give more attention to this committee. The garage also has 2 new garages being built, and it's a huge amount of work and a lot of money. And transportation also we're considering building a new transit center, as well as we should do a study. I just think that combining these 3 committees is a lot for one person. And I would like you to please consider breaking that up when you, because I know that we have a new council member and you'll be looking to change things up in the committees. And so I would like to ask for that. I'd also like to address the Ethics Commission that has recently been created. The resolution was presented by Councilperson Allen, and she has followed through on this for over a year. This is the second time her initiatives have been swiped. I'm disappointed in the leadership from the mayor on this appointment. It is unfair and unprofessional not to put her on that committee. It has the appearance of retribution. I think rebalancing the committees and changing up leadership as well as allowing us to be on committees that interest us will improve attendance. I'm happy with my boards, but would be interested in being on the street committee, RPC, or boards that support the RPC. This is also the opportunity, since he's going to have to change things up. If you would like to be on one, now you can present it to the mayor, since we can't send our emails as we did last time. Thank you.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to piggyback off of that a little bit. We've been told for 2 years now that we don't chair committees because we don't have enough experience. I was a little put back by the Ethics Commission as well. Fortunately, the two people whose decisions surprised me, I also think are probably the two best people for that board. So I don't so much have a complaint, but one of the people that chairs it is one of the junior council members. And I just want to throw that out there. So I just like to see a little more, it screams of favoritism. And I don't mean that offensively, but I would definitely like to see what's it called when you share share the work. I'd like to see us sharing the work.
Socialism? Okay.
Equality.
Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
So I just kind of want to speak on the Ethics Commission. Since I got on City Council, it was not since a year ago, but since I got on City Council, I have read, researched, and have been the one pushing for a review of our Ethics Commission. I did ask the mayor why. It did feel like it was some type of retaliation or retribution, and I asked him in private via email, and I just never got a response from that. It's kind of like you work 2 years on something, you've come up with a lot of stuff. You're the one who pushed for, not once, but twice, for our ethics code to be reviewed because ethics is a strong point for you. And for it to just be 5 other council members that were not wholeheartedly invested, as I was, I did feel like it was retribution. So I would like to ask him on the council, like while we're sitting here in public, why?
Why? What?
Why was I not selected to be on the Ethics Commission when so many people were like, well, if she wants to do it, I mean, one of our fellow council members said, well, yeah, we should do an ethics review and she should be on it. I mean, why wasn't I selected to be on it?
I made the decision to put the best 5 people on the committee. That doesn't rule out anybody else participating, and ultimately recommendations will be brought to the council.
All right, thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say, and while we're talking on this committee, I would like to recognize that I have served on a couple of committees with the council person that was chosen as the chair. I thought he has asked great questions. He has attended, I think, nearly every single meeting that we have had on the committees. And we've talked a lot up here about committee meetings and the fact of, often there's times that quorums aren't held. This particular individual's also been a member of finance and, like I said, been very involved in those meetings as well. And finance, we've not had the problem with people not attending the meetings. But I know I also serve on Parks and Recreation Committee, and oftentimes we have some of the same members that are never there. In fact, I'm thinking about one member that has never been there since I've been back on the committee. Also, Public Safety Committee, in fact, the individual I'm thinking of, they're also on the Public Safety Committee. And generally speaking, public safety, something I would think we would all consider to be exceptionally important, because what you're talking about is our police department, our fire department, our building and codes department. A lot of times they don't have quorum. And I know that's from repeated times of, the chair trying to send emails out to get people there, but they still end up running short and end up not having to have a meeting. I know gas and water. I know there's been times they haven't had meetings because they haven't had a quorum as well. So I think this is probably something that is taken into consideration when the committees are being assigned for it. But like I said, without a doubt, I don't question who is chosen for the chair of the Ethics Commission. I think that's somebody that'll serve greatly and do handle it very well in serving in that position. So I congratulate you on that. Thank you.
Councilperson Red, you recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I may be heard wrong, but I thought I heard one of the previous speakers said that we cannot email the mayor or contact the mayor concerning appointments.
I think that's what they said.
Oh,
Mr. Baker.
Every month, almost every month, I think every month, there's a resolution on your agenda for appointments to boards. That's legislation you're voting on. So if you're sending an email to the mayor, who's also a member of the council, you're violating the Sunshine Law, because if you're sending an email about who needs to be appointed or I need to be appointed, then you're discussing something the council's gonna be voting on,
the
and that's the
boards.
very essence.
But if it's not the board, that we're not voting on.
Well, if you don't vote on it, remember the Public Meetings Act. It's not just stuff you vote on; it's about public policy too. It doesn't have to be just legislation. And so, who serves on what committee is public policy.
Okay.
So you can't be discussing that.
Just wanted to clarify.
in an email.
It used to be the mayor would ask you to write down, under Trotter and Piper,
I know how it
the
used to be.
committees
and
you wanted to be on.
You're
And
correct.
you'd submit it to them.
I personally believe to stay within the parameters of the Open Meetings Act, that you should do exactly what you're doing now. Tell the mayor in a public meeting, these are the committees I want to be on.
Okay. Well, I guess that I can't let the mayor know by emailing him that I would like to be on the Roxy board, so we'll just leave it there.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, I would like to address some of the other comments about quorum, and this is for the public as well. I do attend other committee meetings, but I am treated just the same as any other citizen. I'm not allowed to speak as a city council person. I'm not allowed to participate in agenda items. I get a comment at the end of the meeting if I choose. And so they're not open and they're not working, as well as the no quorums. Recent meeting I attended, we didn't have anything to vote on. The chair squashed every attempt at conversation, hurried us along, even though we were talking about things that were brought up by the director and were part of the director's report. When we attempted to have a conversation, we were told to be quiet, stay on the agenda and move on. So maybe the quorum issues has to do with the leadership of the committees and not the people who aren't coming. Because many of us feel as if we have any opinion in the committees, we're in the way, and we just want to go show up and vote and get through. And a lot of us think differently and want to do the work, but we're not allowed to.
Mayor,
Councilperson Butler.
if I may, just want to say, the chief of staff had asked me to make a clarification on something that I think is very important clarification for the public. There is a difference between the ethics committee that the mayor is appointing city council members to study our ethics code and maybe revise it or make recommendations regarding that, and the Ethics Commission. So just be careful when you're using those terms. The Ethics Commission does not have any city council members on it, as you know.
Councilperson Butler.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple comments. First of all, after listening to the previous speaker, I think maybe I should thank the mayor for the boards I'm on, because our boards go all right. But I will say this much. There have been times where I have chaired that meeting. So, I go to my meetings. I just wanted to, since I do that. A good point. You brought up the chief of staff. I think we forget that we can utilize him. So if we want to be on a board or whatnot, we could technically tell him, and if it should suit him, he could pass that on. I think that's kind of even a part of his job. I think that's it. Thank you.
Councilperson Richmond.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to weigh in on this, even though I'm exiting the body. There has been concern around the different committees and boards. As a city council member, senior, non-senior, whatever it was, I was sort of felt stuck in the same boards. I never had the opportunity to learn about other aspects of the city. And so I do think there is a little bit of a gray area that the council may want to consider creating something, some legislation around how the boards are mandated. I don't know. In terms, I get that it's city code stuff, and the chair has the right of final say. But I too have for several years raised my hand and requested that I be put on the legislative committee from day one when I saw those guys going. So I wanted to learn more about how the state operates and communicate it with the city. So I just would like to leave those comments where they are, and I too have. Well, I get it now because the city attorney said that we would possibly be violating the ethics committee, and there was not a point of clarity from when I first came onto the council. That was something I think we did. We actually got a piece of paper that asks, "What are your top committees that you would like to serve on?" And I believe the mayor, you took that into consideration, and I appreciate that. And I would imagine if that came back, that might be something that might relieve some of the tension that is around this concept and issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilperson Richmond. Anyone else? Do you have to?
All right. It's in the charter, and so you don't have any power to affect the mayor's power. So Article 4, Section 1, subsection G, the mayor shall have the power to appoint all standing committees as he may deem necessary. He shall have the right to change committee members as he may deem advisable. And there is some provisions in the city code that deals with committees, but what I've just read, you don't have the authority to change that on your own. It would have to go through the state legislature.
Councilperson Allen?
So this is my last time being able to say anything. So as for committees, I want y'all to know that the previous council member that was going through all those committees, she was talking about me. No, I don't show up at public safety because I've requested 3 times to be taken off of public safety because I work on Wednesdays in the office in Nashville, and I have not been taken off at this point. I've talked to the chair, and I've sent emails to Mr. Pitts. Okay? As for Parks and Rec, and as for I've been to all the designations. I go to Gas and Water. But as for Parks and Rec, that is also scheduled during a time where I have a child that has a doctor's appointment that she cannot miss. I don't have to report that to anyone. No one. So when the leadership of those committees make it seem like you don't matter because you're not part of the clique, it's a problem. I'm sick of the retaliation when it comes to these committees. That's all I have to say.
Okay, anything else about this item? We're now ready to take up 3A and 3B. You have before you a consideration of Resolution 41, 2022-23, a resolution approving the initiation of a lawsuit regarding the COVID-19 premium pay of David F. Miller. It requires 3/4 majority approval of members present and voting to take this into consideration. I will entertain a motion and a second. Motion been made and properly seconded. Any question or comment regarding 3A? Councilperson Smith on 3A.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you explain to me who is David Miller?
This was addressed during our meeting with Mr. Baker on Tuesday afternoon, a former police officer who passed away. And I think the resolution approving the initiation of a lawsuit regarding premium pay for Mr. Miller is self-explanatory. But all this does is allow us to take up 3B.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment or question regarding 3A? Are you ready to vote on 3A? Requires 3/4 or 9 of us. All members cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Resolution 41 passes. We are now on 3B, Resolution 41, 2022-23, Resolution approving the initiation of a lawsuit regarding the COVID-19 premium pay of David F. Miller. I'll entertain a motion and a second. Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of Resolution 41, or item 3B. Any comment or question regarding this resolution? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
12 yes, 0 no, 0 abstain.
Resolution 41 is adopted. We're now taking up items that were pulled from the consent agenda. We'll take those in order of on the consent agenda. Item 4, Ordinance 49, 2022-23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Yogesh Kumar Patel for zone change on property located at the intersection of Trenton Road and Welchwood Drive from R1 Single Family Residential District to R2 Single Family Residential District. Councilperson Reynolds pulled that, and you are recognized.
Yes, thank you. I sent a quick email. I'm sorry, I forgot to print out the photos that I took of the lot when I went there. If you go to your email, it's there. I've shared them with Miss Lisa and asked that she please make them part of the report when she writes it up. And I'm sorry I didn't have a piece of paper, but I just wanted to talk about this. They presented, if you go, when I visited this lot, it is a sinkhole lot. If you look at the first photo, you can see where the property is empty. And you can see that it drains down into, the whole neighborhood's drained into this property. And then when I visited the lot, I took photos. And the one where you see the third photo, where you see me standing with a shadow, I'm standing on the road, and it's almost a sheer drop from the road. When they spoke to us, this zoning was, the Planning Commission voted against this rezoning. The property is wooded and has a sinkhole for a large portion of the property and does not warrant increased density.
But let me interrupt you and ask
Yes,
you to
sir.
make a motion.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your patience.
Motion for approval.
Motion for approval.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Now proceed, please.
All right. So they also said it's inconsistent with land use plan. This neighborhood was built in the 1970s, and this lot was left because it is not a buildable lot. I understand that we need to infill. I understand that we need to increase our density, but there are just some pieces of property that you should not build on. When the builder talked to us about building on this lot, they talked about filling in the sinkhole and building directly over the sinkhole. They talked about water retention. If you scroll through the pictures and you go to the last photo of the that's included, water retention ponds in neighborhoods are pretty unsightly. Basically, they build a big hole and then all the water sits there and drains. These water retention are on Old Trenton Road, and one of them stays wet all the time. They're just unsightly, and in this neighborhood, sometimes you just got to leave a lot alone because it's needed in the area for water retention. We certainly shouldn't be approving them to put more houses in an unstable lot. So I ask you to please reconsider, follow the considerations and the recommendations of the Regional Planning Commission, and vote no on this.
Councilperson Red, you're recognized.
Yes, for the sponsor that made the motion for approval, I guess the question isn't, or for anybody, it was my understanding though that a house wouldn't be built directly, and correct me if I'm wrong, on the sinkhole itself, but it would just be, the house would be built on another part of the lot. And I might be wrong about that, but I'm trying to think back a month, and at my age, that's a long time ago now.
Is that a question for the sponsor? You're recognized, Councilperson Reynolds.
So I heard that, and I walked out to the lot and walked around the lot. And it is a very steep lot. They're going to have to fill in. They're going to have to redirect water, even to put a house there. It's a very low spot in the whole neighborhood. I am not a builder, so I'm not going to pretend to know things. But if you go back and you look at the pictures, these are different angles, and the whole lot just angles down into the sinkhole. You might be able to put one house there. I'm just saying that we should not increase density. It is not in keeping with the neighborhood that's there, that's been there since the 70s. We just don't need to put more than one house on a lot. We need to leave as much of that lot untouched as possible.
Does that answer your question, Councilperson Wren?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. One thing that was stated when one of the people that were representing this zoning case was that they gave an explanation about how it was that in another area they built a house on a sinkhole. So I'm not really sure what the point of telling us that is if they weren't considering doing the same thing in this instance. And even if they were to say that, well, we're not going to build a house on the sinkhole, we're going to go around it, we rezone it. That doesn't mean that they couldn't necessarily try and do the same thing and try and build it on the sinkhole. I will say that, as was stated, the Regional Planning Commission recommended disapproval of this. It was nearly unanimous. There was only one person on the Regional Planning Commission that voted against the disapproval motion. So I voted against it on the Regional Planning Commission level. I voted against it last month, and I'm going to be voting against it myself as well today. The Regional Planning Commission staff also recommended disapproval. There was a lot of information we got handed to us beforehand telling us that this wasn't a wise idea and not adding additional density to this, particular area with everything that's involved with it. So I would ask that you vote against this.
Councilperson Little, you're recognized.
Thank you. From what I remember from what he has stated, they were going to do 3 homes on this property, and they wanted the R2 in order to build an additional one in order to save money, not save money, but do affordable housing, make it more affordable. And then not only that, they did show us the plans. Give us an example of what another home had been built on the sinkhole. And so there was already going to be houses built on it, 3 to be exact. This just made it 4, and we have voted in favor of it. That's it.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make this quick. I took geology this semester, and I just want to add this because we're not subject matter experts, but when we get some information that might be helpful up here, we should share it. This entire area is on limestone. You could have a sinkhole under your house. Sinkholes are something that the people and builders around here have to deal with, just simply because of the geology of the basin and the Cumberland Plateau and all that good stuff where we live. Thank you.
Councilperson Allen, you're recognized.
Am I correct in saying this one is the one that was in R1 and it's going to R2? However, they were unsure they could still get the same amount of houses in, but it was a housekeeping thing to change it to R2. Is this the one?
We'll ask that of Councilperson Streetman, who's our representative on the Planning Commission.
No, this was not a housekeeping thing. They were requesting having it changed.
No, not housekeeping. It was confusing on whether or not they could build what they wanted to build, whether it was R2 or R1.
Councilperson Streetman.
No,
Did you guys?
Councilperson Streetman.
No, this was them asking to go from one zoning to the other to allow them to be able to build more there.
It was unclear. They were only building a certain amount of houses, but it was unclear if they could build them on R1 or on R2.
This was not that case.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilperson Reynolds.
I'd just like to say that it is not our job when we're looking at rezoning to support maximizing the profits of the builders. It is our moral job to build a livable, walkable community that people feel safe and are comfortable in. if in 20 years a house falls in the sinkhole, all of us should be sitting on the council saying, I did that. Just as much as when people say, thanks for the sidewalks, we all get to say, we did that. We just need to have responsibility for our decisions. And again, I walked this property. They can build what is allowed, but I walked that property and just getting a driveway off that road is going to be difficult because of how quickly it drops in most of the property. Thank you.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick again. Well, first of all, I just want to say to the previous speaker, I understand her position on this, but I actually don't really like that we do zoning at all. And I think that our only real purpose is to protect the rights of the individual to do what they want with their property. But what I actually pressed my button for is if we're going to pull zoning cases off of the consent agenda, since we're not allowed to talk about it, it might behoove us to send that to the clerk so that we can pull up the information before we come in so that we're not all sitting here going, what case are we even talking about? Because honestly, that's kind of how I feel right now. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on ordinance 49? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. In a moment. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam,
Wait a minute, I want to know what we vote.
we're voting on ordinance 49.
To do what?
Up or down? Second reading.
To get rid of it?
Second reading. Up or down? If it, all right. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
7 yes, 5 no, 0 abstain.
Ordinance 49 is adopted. Second reading. We're now on item number 5 from the consent agenda. Ordinance 50, 2022-23, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville. Application of Universal Exports LLC for zone change on property fronting the western terminus of Pruitt Lane, south of Pruitt Lane and west of Whitfield Road, from AG Agricultural District to R4 Multiple Family Residential District. Councilperson Reynolds, you pulled it. You are recognized.
I move to defer the vote until January 5th in regular session.
Motion been made to defer,
Postpone.
to postpone ordinance 50 until the January 2023 regular session. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right.
So
We are on the motion to postpone. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
So I've spoken with the owner of the property and he had a buyer. He is now on ag and it's a mobile home and he's grandfathered. The buyer that he had for the property that he was rezoning for as an R4 has paused or is considering backing out. And he's concerned if we pass this rezoning, what that will do if he is continued to operate a mobile home park under grandfather clause and then we rezone it to R4. And he still wants to sell it and he's working with his realtor. So I reached out to Mr. Tyndall. Postponing it until next month does not affect anything, and this is at the request of the property owner to postpone until he has more time to do research.
Council, anyone else wish to speak on the motion to postpone until the January 2023 regular session? All right, all members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
11 yes, 1 no, 0 abstain.
Motion to postpone passes. We're now on item number, here we go, 6. Resolution 39B 2022-23, a resolution approving appointment to the Parking Commission. That was pulled by Councilperson Marquis. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to motion for approval for Resolution 39B, 2020.
Motion been made and properly seconded in favor of Resolution 39B. You're recognized.
All right, thank you. So I don't want to draw this out because we've already spoken on the situation happening here, and in light of new information, I think I would prefer to motion to postpone this till February of regular session in light of the investigation.
Motion been made and properly seconded to postpone this appointment to February 2023 regular session. Any comment or question regarding the motion to postpone? Councilperson Butler, you wish to speak to the motion to postpone?
Yes, sir.
You are recognized.
I promise we've spoken about this ad nauseum. I want to go home too, everyone. But Mayor, my question is, if we postpone this till February, what happens with the position till now? This is a reappointment, right?
This is an appointment, but he being asking to reappoint him to the Parking Commission.
So would that just leave him in that position until then anyway?
No.
So
His
then it
term
would
is
leave us-
expired. There are now 4 members of the Parking Commission.
So we would be leaving it vacant.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Councilperson Holloman on the motion to postpone?
Yeah, just with everything going on, don't y'all feel like this is kind of preemptive, just to say, hey, no, you can't be on the parking commission, especially when he's chaired for so long? I mean, it's kind of damaging to the parking commission, and on top of that, these are allegations, and I just feel like it's kind of preemptive at this point. But that's all I got. Thank you.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized on the motion to postpone.
Yes.
You're recognized.
I don't think the fact that it would be leaving us short one member. We just got a presentation last week about the job that this committee's been doing. Do we really want to shorten them on a member for the next few months and what they need to do? I think we need to go ahead and vote on this tonight, in my opinion.
Councilperson Butler on the motion to postpone.
Yes, thank you, sir. Again, I think we can go ahead and postpone this, but also I would be remiss if I did not say we did get an email from one Mr. Jason Steen, and I think that he might not be a bad person to appoint to that position. And no, I'm not joking. Thank you.
Councilperson Little.
Thank you. Just real quick, as far as it goes to postponing and things like that, I know at a lot of jobs, if there's a pending investigation, they'll send you home on suspension pending the investigation. So let's postpone it, let the investigation wrap itself up, complete, and that way we can go forward clear-headed, clear-minded, without anything hanging over us.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak to the motion to postpone? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? We're voting on the motion to postpone. All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
6 yes, 6 no, 0 abstain.
Motion to postpone fails. We're back on the resolution as presented. Any comment or question regarding that? Are you ready to vote on the Councilperson Streetman on the?
Yes, sir. I'm just going to make it quick. I would ask that y'all vote in favor of this. While there may be things going on, as we discussed earlier with the Roxy, there is no allegations or investigations or anything going on with any member of the Parking Commission. There have been no complaints with the job that he has done in serving on there. He's been an integral part of it. And again, we just heard how great that they have been doing. So I would ask that y'all vote to keep him on there because, again, we want to see this area continue to improve. And while we had got one email from someone that would be interested to serve, we've talked before about the difficulty of finding those people willing to be able to serve. This is somebody that obviously has a lot to do with parking when you think about everything that has to do with something as big as the Roxy and someone who's as involved with the downtown business owners as he is. So I'd ask that you vote to support and reappoint him to this committee.
Councilperson Marquis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Baker. I'm just trying to figure out if, and again, because we don't know, if we appoint him and if the investigation finds something that we know definitively, what does that mean for the city in having him in an appointed position?
I don't think it will mean anything other than in this possible way. If there were to be a complaint from a employee that works in, a city employee that works in parking about some kind of employment discrimination, retaliation, that sort of stuff, then it could possibly hurt the city if a lawsuit was filed along those lines by a city employee. And if the investigation by the EOC determines that he has done some wrong things.
Okay,
Yeah, it could harm the city in future litigation.
okay,
It's possible.
thank you.
Councilperson Butler, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mayor. The previous speaker makes a good point, and to piggyback off of her, once we approve the appointment, there's nothing we can do to undo it, is there?
Not this body. It's my legal opinion that being appointed to a city board to include the parking commission is a public office, and someone who's appointed or elected to a public office can only be removed in the absence of a charter provision that provides an alternative means. And we used to have an alternative means, but we did away with that. The only way to remove them is by the state ouster law.
So we couldn't just repeal the resolution or write a resolution to undo the resolution?
What?
Like, we can't just write a resolution to undo the resolution, kind of like what I tried to do with your resolution.
No, because once someone is appointed, they have what the courts call a property interest in their public office, and they cannot be removed except by judicial means, by some method provided by law. And as since we don't have, the city council used to have authority to remove people, but now that we did away with that in the new charter, there's only one way to remove people, and that's through the state ouster law.
Councilperson Butler.
Thank you. The only additional thing I have to say is we are responsible to avoid any instance of impropriety. That's all.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I'd like to say first that on our chart, I noticed that we have 26 vacancies, but I hear from residents all the time that they apply for boards and committees and they don't hear anything and they're not getting selected. So I'm not sure that just because we only have one email doesn't mean that that's all that's requesting to be on boards and committees. But I'd also like to, again, earlier tonight, when the letter from the Roxy board was read, I continue to remind you that, yes, there's a difference between allegations and findings, but there were findings. So it's not all allegations. They have mitigated the findings at the Roxy, but they were there. So I just put that back out there. And again, as the previous speaker said, it is our job to avoid appearances of wrongdoing and to make the best choices for our community.
Councilperson Zacharias, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is probably going to surprise some people because I did speak for a rather lengthy bit of time on the resolution, the other resolution regarding that this individual was involved in. So I do think that, well, I don't think I am told by this individual that he committed let me back up 1 second here. He experienced a lapse in judgment, or he acted inappropriately. He offered to come forward to his boss, I guess, or who he answers to, and acknowledge that inappropriate behavior. To be honest, I think that might be sufficient in my mind to justify or to warrant maybe not having that person serve in an optional or an appointed position for the city. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to this resolution? Seeing none, hearing none, are you ready to vote? All members, please cast your vote. Every member voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Madam Clerk, take the vote.
4 yes, 6 no, 0 abstain.
Resolution 39B fails. We are now on council and mayor comments. Any member of council have a comment? Hearing none or seeing none, Oh, I'm sorry. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Apologize. Mine's quick. I apologize. This was something I should have included on my earlier report. But on December 14th, there will, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Burt Recreational Center, there will be a public meeting for the plan to discuss the Red River Plan. So it's a Red River Neighborhood Plan public meeting at Burt Cobb Recreation Center, December 14th, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Allen, you're recognized for comment.
I would just like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. We won't get to see each other again till then. Through this time, take some time out, love on your family, and be safe. During this time of year, there's also a heightened amount of fires. So please make sure you're being safe with your fireplaces, with your stoves, with all that other stuff, and just have a happy, happy holiday season. Thank you.
Council Butler, watch out for deer.
Thanks,
Councilperson
Mayor.
Butler.
Just real quick, because I've gotten a lot of messages about it, particularly one from someone extremely important, my husband, who requests that we please allow people to comment during the live session on YouTube. I swear my husband asked me. Thank you.
The comments have not been turned off. It must be an issue with YouTube because I checked with Casey Williams, who runs that for us. It is not turned off on our end, so it must be something on YouTube. I am reading into the record the report on debt obligations by CDE in your council packet. This is required to be presented to council after debt issuance and required to be recorded in the minutes. No approval is necessary as you already approved the issuance of debt. On November 3rd, 2022, we closed on $30.2 million of revenue bond proceeds for CDE Lightband. We issued at a premium of over $1.6 million, meaning we only have to repay the $28.6 million over the life of the debt, which is 20 years. CDE cash funded the debt service reserve fund of $500,000. The interest rate is 4.0591%. Use of funds is for the expansion of our electric system. That is the end of that statement. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Without objection, we're adjourned.